past foreign interventions have done more harm than good there, so the UN and the US are cautious. Kenya says it has a moral obligation to save lives and the right credentials for the job. More widely, the high-profile operation also gives President Ruto political capital to champion Kenya and other African countries. It might also attract other international trade deals to create jobs and generate cash to top up Kenya's China debt-drained finances. Volunteering to lead the police team has reinforced US relations. If the deployment meets or even exceeds expectations in restoring some degree of security, the economic and social problems that enable gangs to expand at alarming rates remain. Healing a divided society is beyond the remit of this mission. This edition of The Inquiry is presented by me, Germain. The producer was Jill Collins, researcher Matt Tolson, editor Tara McDermott, and technical producer Nikki Edwards.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcus, and this is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. And good morning to the team. It is 13 in Winnipeg. Our high today, 21. We're going to have some clearing this morning. It's a little chilly, but that's not difficult after earlier this week when it was so warm. It's going to be clear into tonight, low 10. Tomorrow, more sunshine. But once again, 13 to start your Wednesday. Good morning, Kevin Nipatebo behind the controls of our YouTube. Good morning. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi behind our technical board this morning. And Abby also covers the weather forecasts on air. So we'll talk to him shortly. As well, Corey Funk is here. Corey directs the program and also will be covering the commute on air. We're on air with you until 8:37. If you see anything early that's causing issue in traffic, just a reminder of our commuter line at 788-3093. And now here's Heather Wells from our news center with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, an early morning fire has closed both north and southbound Keewatin. It has shut down the street between Tyndall and Burroughs. Winnipeg police say emergency crews were called to a fire at a townhouse around 3:30 this morning. They expect Keewatin will be closed for about 1.5 hours. We're going to bring you more information through the morning on that story. As well, the Winnipeg Art Gallery Kayumak is holding on to a fake painting. It was believed to have been the work of world-renowned Anishinaabe artist Norval Morrisseau. Thunder Bay Police, though, have since confirmed it is not authentic. We'll hear more on this story in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So coming up in our program this morning, we're going to be talking about a special screening of a Pixar animated film that helps young people understand emotions. It is tackling in anxiety in Inside Out 2. So there's a lot of buzz about this. And also some of the buzz is because it's not just reaching young people. It's reaching a generation of people who weren't taught about coping, emotions, and identification and dealing. So we're going to talk about a special screening that's happening for community, and that's coming up after 6. Also, in the next hour of the program, how's your social health? That's our topic of our mental health column today, so stay tuned. We'll talk about what exactly that means. And then later we continue a bit of a series of discussions we're having this week about young people and employment among some of the highest unemployment rates for youth. We asked today, what was your first job? Stay tuned. World Report's next.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger, sitting in for Tom Power. Jodie Comer is an Emmy and Tony Award-winning performer who's famous for playing a Russian assassin on the show Killing Eve.
I don't like to be challenged.
Do you want me to ask someone else?
No.
She'll tell you about training for her new film and earning the confidence to play confident characters.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A wildfire is creeping dangerously close to the power facility in Churchill Falls, Labrador, and it has forced all staff to leave the plant. Now, for the first time, the plant is monitored remotely. No one is on the ground to make major changes. Jennifer Williams is the president of Newfoundland Labrador Hydro.
Certainly not ideal. It hasn't been done before, but that is what we're hoping that we should be able to do with implementation of this remote monitoring and very little remote operation ability.
Yesterday, 2 transmission lines were tripped. It knocked out power to Labrador City and the neighboring town of Wabush. Labrador City is getting some backup power from Quebec, but Wabush was left without power overnight. Hydro crews say people there should prepare for extended outages over the next several days. Now to a community torn apart by wildfire 3 years ago. Lytton, British Columbia is struggling to rebuild, and the people who lost their homes have a warning for other Canadian towns hit by disasters. When the recovery money starts to come in, make sure those dollars stay in town. Yvette Brand has that story.
Ken Pite lives a short ferry ride across the Fraser River from Lytton. He's camped here since his retirement house burnt down in 2021, watching the slow pace of recovery on the other bank.
I think there's, little municipalities that are making darn sure that what happened immediately after the disaster here doesn't happen when the disaster hits their town.
He says millions were spent remediating toxic soil, then sifting the layers below because of provincial archaeology regulation. Now property owners are getting bills for this work.
BC government thinks it's that important to do this scale of archaeology work after a disaster, then they should foot the bill for the entire amount.
So far, he says too little money has gone to rebuilding homes. And Lytton's mayor, Denise O'Connor, says it's taking too long.
Why it took so long? It just seems to be going on and on.
Lytton First Nation Chief Nakaya Hana says people who have returned mostly live in temporary trailers.
There's still sadness. There will always be sadness. I think there's a lot of hope right now. As we see the rebuild starting to begin. People starting to see some hope, starting to feel some hope.
More than $174 million of federal and provincial recovery funding has poured into Lytton's rebuild. So far, only about half a dozen homes are close to completion. Yvette Brenn, CBC News, Lytton.
Protesters are back on the streets of Nairobi today. Anti-government demonstrations have left at least 23 people dead. People gather over the body of a protester near Kenya's parliament. They say he was shot by police. Officers fired bullets at demonstrators yesterday as they stormed the parliament building. Protesters are angry over newly approved taxes. Today, these Kenyans say they fear there is more violence to come.
Really, the finance bill has caused a lot of losses, as you see, a lot of destruction, and people have really lost their businesses. If government is not ready to change, the worst is still underway.
I think it will feel more violence because people are very angry. People are bitter.
Kenya's President William Ruto is promising to end what he calls the treasonous protests, no matter the cost. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is home free. He landed in Australia today after 14 years of legal battles. Assange spent the last 5 years in a UK prison fighting extradition to the United States on charges of espionage. The CBC's Anna Cunningham has been following the story from London.
Touchdown in Australia, the moment Julian Assange and his supporters have been waiting years for. Hours earlier in a US court in Saipan in the Pacific Northern Mariana Islands, Assange pleaded guilty to one charge of breaching the US Espionage Act as part of a plea deal made with US prosecutors. He was sentenced to time already served in a UK prison and freed. His lawyer Barry Pollock said it was the end of years of legal drama.
We firmly believe that Mr. Assange never should have been charged under the Espionage Act and engaged in exercise that journalists engage in every day.
It was the Australian government that finally levied the pressure on the US case.
The Australian government stands up for Australian citizens. That's what we do.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese welcomed the result.
Julian Assange is now home here in Australia.
Julian Assange still divides opinion. For some, he is a hero of free speech. For others, a villain who endangered lives. His father, John Shipton, said his son's release was a huge relief.
That Julian can come home to Australia and see his family regularly and do the ordinary things of life is a treasure.
Hugging his wife Stella on the tarmac of Canberra Airport, they'll now start a new life with their 2 young sons outside of Julian Assange's detention. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
NATO has officially appointed Mark Rutte as its next Secretary General. The outgoing Dutch Prime Minister will take over in October. He will be leading the military alliance at a critical time for European security. Ottawa is warning Canadians in Lebanon it's time to get out. A war between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon is looking ever more likely, and if that happens, the Canadian government says it may not be able to run evacuation flights. Evan Dyer reports.
Hezbollah launches missiles towards Israel from a Lebanese hillside, and Israelis watch their own country's missile defenses stop most of them. Scenes like these have been playing out for months, as have Israeli artillery, air and drone strikes on Lebanon. Houses, fields and farms on both sides of the border have burned. More than 60,000 Israelis and around 90,000 Lebanese have fled their homes. There have been civilian deaths on both sides. But now it looks like things could get worse, says former Israeli diplomat Alon Pinkas.
What worries me most is the possibility of a war as a result of miscalculation rather than planning or by design.
Pinkas says Hezbollah doesn't appear to want a full-blown war. Washington has repeatedly warned Israel not to start one either, but events have a logic of their own. Last time Israel and Hezbollah went to war was 2006. Israel bombed all over Lebanon, and there was a mad rush to escape the country. Thousands of people with Canadian passports headed for the port of Beirut.
And a taxi driver that normally would charge you $40 is now charging $600.
Canada ended up evacuating about 15,000 citizens, its biggest evacuation ever. This time, 15,000 Canadians have already registered with the embassy in Beirut, and Canadian officials say that's likely just a fraction of the true number in the country. They're telling them to get out now, before commercial flights stop completely, and warning that this time, mass evacuation may not be possible. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Sharks are circling Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Speculation about his future as leader of the Liberal Party of Canada is getting louder. A Conservative candidate won a Toronto by-election in a former Liberal stronghold. Trudeau says he's not going anywhere, but if a Liberal leadership race is called, one former MP says he would consider running to replace Trudeau. Rafi Boudjikanian has the details.
Frank Baylis is not a totally unknown quantity.
The Liberal Party has a 3-point plan to help the economy.
In 2015, the wealthy businessman and longtime Liberal Party member ran in Pierrefonds Dollard, a Montreal riding that typically votes for the Grits. He won, but quit after only one term. Now he's considering a comeback on a bigger stage, leadership of the party.
A number of people are asking me to think about this, and I'm taking their request seriously.
Two Liberal MPs who would not speak publicly tell CBC News they've heard his name thrown around as a potential candidate. One even says they advised Baylis to think about mounting a national campaign soon rather than wait a couple of years. Conservative Don Stewart's win a day ago in a by-election in the Liberal stronghold of Toronto St. Paul's has some of the backbench whispers about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's leadership of the Liberals getting louder. For now, he says he's going nowhere.
It's clear that I and my entire Liberal team have much more work to do.
Baylis says he will wait and see what Trudeau's next steps are.
Prime Minister Trudeau will decide what he wants to do if and when he decides to do that.
No sitting Liberal MP has publicly said they'd want to run for leadership or that it's time for Trudeau to step down. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. If you are looking for tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, check out cbckidsnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live downtown, as we are each and every morning with you, with the morning show on CBC. Thanks for being with us. It is 13 degrees in Winnipeg. We'll set up the day for you momentarily. It's so interesting now that we're on YouTube visually. That morning sky shot says a lot. Yesterday, the sun was just streaming down Portage Avenue, but a little more gray out there today. This hour on the program, speaking of gray, do you know how to identify your emotions? Do they feel gray? Do you feel sad sometimes? What color is anxiety? We're going to talk this morning about Inside Out 2. There's a lot of buzz about this Pixar animated film. This is the obviously second one. It helps people understand emotions, tackling anxiety this time around in the sequel to the first one. But it's not just helping young people, it's actually helping people of all ages. Anxiety Disorders Association of Manitoba is holding a special screening of the movie tomorrow, so we're going to hear all about that. So stay tuned. Also, we're going to build on the story that nationally came out this week about the Conservative Party winning that seat in St. Paul's from the Liberals for the first time in over 30 years. So how big of a deal is that? Why is the whole country talking about this one seat in the Toronto area? So we're going to get some context for that as we have a full interview this half hour. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells for news in Manitoba. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, emergency crews got 8 people out of a burning townhouse on Keewatin early this morning. 2 are in the hospital after the fire that started around 3:30 this morning. Fire and police are still on the scene, and for now, Keewatin is closed in both directions between Tyndall and Burroughs, and police expect that intersection or that section of Keewatin will be closed for at least the next hour or so. We are going to get an update today on the investigation into that horrific crash near Carberry last year. RCMP say they will include details about a decision on laying charges in the crash that left 17 people dead, as well as further investigational details they were not able to share before. So we'll hear about that coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
6:12 is the time right now, and Abby is repping Team Canada with his soccer jersey.
Yeah, I'm in a good mood today. I guess the Peruvian side would be more gray.
Right?
Losing the game yesterday.
You're wearing the Canadian sunshine. You watching all the games? You're just dipping in and out when Canada's
I'm following
playing?
all the Copa games. I'm like really in the group stage right now, and it's really interesting.
So who are you rooting for? Because, I mean, honestly, when it comes to soccer on this stage, yes, Canada, but there's usually another team.
Yeah, because I'm a team Leo Mercy, so I'm partially rooting for Argentina, but as you can see, I'm repping the Canadian flag today because they put their best in yesterday, and they did their best and came with a point.
Yeah, nice. And they needed it.
They needed it.
Let's get into what's going on today and find out what our best is going to be when it comes to the weather.
It's just going to be another cool day today. 13 in Winnipeg. It's cloudy outside. We're expecting clearing skies this morning with light northerly breeze. The high will be reaching 21, slightly cooler than the seasonal normal of 25 that we're supposed to be at this time of the year. Tonight, clear skies will continue with the winds becoming calm in the evening, and temperatures will deep to 10 degrees. And for tomorrow, we will see that sun you're looking for. So if you're looking for some sunny starts, you have to wait till tomorrow. Right now, Winnipeg, it is 13, clear and cool. We're going to touch a high of 21.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on in the commute this morning. Corey Funk, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Really, the only issue is what we just heard from Heather about the issue on Keewatin. As you heard earlier this morning, fires closed both north and southbound Keewatin. It's shut down between Tyndall and Burroughs. I'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the morning. If you have any updates on what the impacts of that are for traffic, or if you're walking, biking, driving, you see anything else going on in the city, on the highways, anywhere, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, here's a question for you listeners on a Wednesday morning. If I were to go inside your head, what emotions would I see? That is the premise of Pixar's Inside Out, and the long-awaited sequel, Pixar's Inside Out 2, hit theaters almost 2 weeks ago. It already has a 91% score on Rotten Tomatoes. That's the movie review site that often we go to when we're deciding if we're going to go to a show. The main theme, though, of this specific version of the movie is anxiety, and it is a smart movie. Have a listen.
This is Joy, coming to you live in Riley's mind. Our little girl's growing up so fast. Ow.
It should be nothing but smooth sailing from...
Hello. I'm anxiety. Where can I put my stuff? A new emotion. Oh, I'm sorry. We wanted to make such a good first impression. What do you mean, we? I'm Envy. Oh, look at your hair. hair. Oh yeah, not happening. That's ennui. On what?
It's what you would call the boredom.
What's your name, big fella? That's embarrassment. Welcome to headquarters, embarrassment. Nope, going high. Oh, you got a real sweaty palm there, buddy.
This is such a smart film, and it also has helped to teach about emotions. And as I mentioned, this specific film from Pixar is focusing on anxiety. Now, that is something that from time to time we all have to deal with. But for some people, it is, of course, also a disorder that can be difficult to live with. Anxiety Disorders Association of Manitoba is hosting a special screening tomorrow night at Scotiabank Theatre of the film. So the aim is to encourage more conversations about teenage mental health. Scott McFadden is back with us in studio today, executive director of Adam, to talk about the screening. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks again for having us on, Marcy.
So how important is a film like this as a teaching tool? I mean, obviously it's cute, it's quirky, it's smart, but how important is it to address these things?
Yeah, well, when the original movie came out in 2015, my child was 4 at the time, went and saw the movie, and it was really, really important movie to our family in terms of opening up that discussion about emotions and being able to actually visualize, what those emotions are. In case of Inside Out 1, child's 4 years old, emotions are much simpler. Fast forward 9 years later, 2024, and Inside Out 2 comes out, and that child who was 4 is now 13 and is experiencing far more complex emotions, including anxiety.
What can folks expect at the special screening tomorrow? What do you have planned?
At 6:45, Dr. Simon Treppel is going to come and give a very hopefully enjoyable presentation about what anxiety disorders are and treatment options. And then we'll have the show. And so really just to normalize that conversation about emotions. And we really think it's important for multi-generations to be at that movie because in my 50 years on the planet, I think I have forgotten what it's like to be 13 years old. And so this movie is just that nice little reminder for everyone.
You said there's something important. You said a reminder of what anxiety disorders are. And a lot of people still think of an anxiety as a thing or as, a deep disorder. But there's a spectrum of this, right?
Yeah, well, and it's far more common than I think we understand it to be. So 1 in 4 Manitobans over the course of their lifetime will manage an anxiety disorder. And so that commonality, I really think, brings it to the forefront. And, historically, this is something we haven't really talked about is our emotions. And this movie, in a fun way, in a visual way, brings that conversation to the forefront. And it's not actually a scary conversation. And it doesn't really have to be. It just has to be a conversation. Because when we don't talk about it, then it becomes unhealthy.
What are some of signs of anxiety disorder that parents can look out for in their kids?
Yeah, so at Anxiety Disorders, we're a peer support organization specializing in public education. So, my background isn't the clinical background, but certainly, in anxiety disorders is, anxiety is a natural, normal, healthy sort of emotion. But when it carries on for an unnatural, extended period of time, then it does manifest into something more concerning, like a disorder.
So you have to pay attention to the length of time because it could be an anxiety response to something specific that comes and goes, that's natural maybe. But if it goes on for weeks or months, as we've previously discussed, that's when you start really needing to lean into, okay, what's going on here?
That's right. And really, in terms of, treatment options, again, that first conversation is really important. And for kids, it might be hard to talk to parents. So you can start with a guidance counselor at school. You can talk to a trusted uncle. And there are a number of resources out there within the system once that decision has been made to get help.
I understand, speaking of schools, Scott, that you go to schools and you talk about anxiety. What does that look like? What do the kids ask you?
Yeah, well, kids are have a much deeper level of understanding of emotions than we did when we were 13. So, kids are having conversations. They're telling us about, well, actually, when I go to talk therapy, and so they're very open about it. And, these are, jocks and hockey players talking about how they're feeling.
Breaking all kinds of stigmas.
It's pretty great. It's pretty great. But of course, I think unlike when I was 13, I think the kids are young adults are facing a lot more pressures than maybe I was. Actually, just yesterday, I wasn't sure if you caught this, but the Surgeon General in the United States has said that social media is actually something very dangerous along the lines of smoking, which is quite remarkable in terms of the impact on young adolescents.
How are kids responding to the information sessions, and what's it like trying to encourage those conversations in families? Given that maybe a kid might have a better understanding even of anxiety or another issue than even a parent might. So it's important to make those connections, right?
Yeah, and maybe it's a generational thing. I think the older generations perhaps were a little more reluctant to talk about emotions. And so these conversations are really difficult, which is why this movie is really important. And I did see a note that Stacey Cardigan Smith put up on Facebook after going to see the movie about what anxiety is. And I just want to read you some of those comments because I think it's really important. Anxiety isn't this dark, horrible thing. So anxiety in Inside Out 2 starts out as a character that's just trying to help Riley be the best version of herself and to fit in. Anxiety is helping her to think ahead and manage potential situations. And in that way, anxiety is portrayed without a negative intention. They're just trying to do their best. But eventually anxiety takes over, as you can't pre-plan for every scenario in life, and it's exhausting and unsustainable. And in a particularly emotional scene, Riley's overtaken by anxiety and has an anxiety attack. But again, anxiety is not this horrible, terrible thing. It's just it's something that's there and needs to be managed. But it keeps us safe. It keeps us safe from when we cross the road. But it's just when it becomes that unhealthy, when it overtakes your life, then you need treatment.
I love leaving it on a positive note so people can navigate through not only their days but their lives. So the screening tomorrow. Thank you very much for being here today to talk about it.
Thank you very much for having us. Facebook, Instagram, I know we're telling people not to go on social media, but please, if you want tickets, they are going really quickly. We're down to about our last 25 tickets.
Okay.
So, and the tickets are slightly discounted. Rush seating, 6:45 presentation, show at 7, Polo Park Theatre.
Thank you very much, Scott. Scott is the executive director of ADAM, the Anxiety Disorders Association Manitoba. So as mentioned, that special screening tomorrow night at Scotiabank Theatre here in Winnipeg. The presentation at 6:45, the film at 7 o'clock. And as mentioned, just some tickets still available, but they're going fast. So Facebook or Instagram for ADAM.
I'm Janet Stewart. How important is it to you to protect your skin from the sun? There's been some misinformation about sunscreen being shared on TikTok. Wednesday on Radio Noon, we're going to talk to a dermatologist about what myths are out there and what you need to know about sun safety. What questions do you have for her? What stories would you like to share? Join our call-in conversation 12:30 on Wednesday, or leave a message now, 204-788-3797.
It is 6:24 a.m. right now, and up next on CBC, 6 of the 13 MPs in Manitoba are Conservative, 4 are Liberal. Will any of those seats flip next year, or to any of the other parties? Elsewhere in the country, it was quite a surprise and an upset this week in the Liberal stronghold of Toronto St. Paul's. That riding had been held over 30 years by the Liberals, but it was won in a by-election by Conservative Don Stewart, who took 42.1% of the vote. To talk about it, Laurie Turnbull's here, Professor of Political Science at Dalhousie University. Good morning.
Good morning.
Some people here in Manitoba are wondering, why this is significant and a significant conversation in the country.
I think there were a lot of eyes on this by-election because it's been such a safe seat for the Liberals for so long. There was a sense that, if they don't win this, that could be very telling about what's coming. And they didn't win it. And so I think because the Liberals really rely on the GTA, which is very vote-rich, the Toronto and surrounding area, for electing Liberal MPs, the fact that the Conservatives were able to win this riding and the fact that it's so safe typically for the Liberals means that if this happens in other places, the Liberals could be facing quite an unwelcome result in the next election.
What were the factors, do you think, that contributed to Don Stewart's win, both locally, which in Manitoba we wouldn't know and be plugged into, but also on the national stage?
So the Conservative candidate seems to me did a really good job of going and talking to people about what the issues, whatever issues were important to them, whether it's housing crisis, affordability crisis, in Ontario and other places too. Car theft is a big issue. So going and having those conversations with constituents. It was not a case where he ran a really high-profile campaign. In fact, for the most part, I think he declined interviews with media. Pierre Poilievre was not there, making a bunch of noise with the candidate. It was more of a quiet ground game, but a very effective one, obviously. I think the Liberal vote, if you look at, that there was a really big effort by the Liberal Party to make sure that the Liberal base came out for that candidate. So the Prime Minister went to the riding, ministers went to the riding. But at the end of the day, the Conservative candidate won around 15,000 votes, which is typical for a Conservative candidate in that riding in a general election. So, that there was that. But at the same time, the Liberal base clearly did not come out entirely for the candidate. And so it's not that they all switched to the Conservative. It's that voter turnout was lower, which is typical in a by-election, but a really significant decline in the Liberal vote. And so that's something that I think is going to be a concern for the Liberals. It's even if they don't, even if the Conservatives don't convert people, if they don't come out and vote for the Liberals, it's almost the same as a vote for the Conservatives.
We're already hearing this morning that there's a business person in Ontario that's already looking potentially at thinking about leadership. But we've also heard that Justin Trudeau has made no intention of saying that he's not going to continue to lead the party. What do you think comes next there? What's the likelihood Trudeau is going to continue to lead the Liberals, and what's the pressure likely to be like behind the scenes?
He does seem to be saying he's not going anywhere. This is a by-election, doesn't affect his leadership at all. I think it's going to be harder for him to hold that line without having some interruptions from prospective people who might see this as a potential window for them to come in and make a leadership bid. I think we've been questioning the leadership of Justin Trudeau in terms of whether he's going to keep going. Those questions have been swirling for a long time. And now this by-election result only makes it more intense. That said, he is the Prime Minister. As long as he has the confidence of the House, he can stay where he is and keep doing what he's doing. But I think the conversations over the summer will be important, whether there's going to be any kind of movement from the caucus to say, look, we want to change things before we run out of time. And so it'll be a difficult summer, I think.
And before we run out of time, I have to ask, if he does decide to not continue to lead the party, what's enough time to sort of reestablish the party with a new leader? Because we're already getting close to a year to an election here.
Right. It depends on who it is. If it's somebody who's seasoned, like Dominic LeBlanc, for example, he could hit the ground running. He's been a politician a long time. Somebody like Mark Carney, big name, but not the political experience, I think it would be a harder hill to climb. And so it depends on who they get, if they get anybody.
All right. Thank you for this, Lori. Appreciate it.
Thank you, too. Take care.
It is Lori Turnbull, professor of political science at Dalhousie University, analyzing that important by-election result that a lot of people are calling telling in Toronto this week. It is coming up to 6:30 here, and in Winnipeg, we've got mostly cloudy conditions downtown in Winnipeg to start our day here. Traffic right now, one big one we're going to hear a bit more in the news potentially here, but we closed Keewatin north and southbound between Tyndall and Burroughs. And so that is a traffic note for you. If you have any others, 788-3093 is where you can reach us. Well, coming up, we have business news. If you're a regular listener, you know Crystal Lee Ramlakan is going to be joining us via Zoom right after our news. And today, Crystal Lee is talking about the latest data showing inflation ticked up last month. She's going to break it down for us and talk about what that means for the Bank of Canada. And also a new report's out that says Canadians are favoring domestic investments too much. So we'll find out all about it after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. It's 6:30. Still cloudy, but we are clearing out a little bit, ever so slowly. We're at 13 degrees right now. We'll reach a cooler high of 21 today. We begin in the Tyndall Park area of Winnipeg, where a townhouse fire has shut down Keewatin in both directions. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is there right now and joins us live. Megan?
Yes, right now we have fire crews there on the roof of this townhouse. This is on Keewatin between Tyndall and Burroughs. What we know is that this morning around 3:45, the fire call came in. There were 8 people inside. They were rescued out of the burning townhome, and then 2 were taken to hospital. We don't know what their conditions are. Now, firefighters and emergency responders are here on the scene. I don't see any flames right now, just a bit of a haze of smoke over top of the townhouse here. But we do have emergency crews that are blocking Keewatin between Tyndall and Burroughs, but it looks like they might be cleaning up now. They are getting their hoses organized. So right now, if you are traveling in the area, you can't get through on Keewatin between Tyndall and Burroughs. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan, and we'll bring you updates as to when that part of Keewatin reopens. We are going to get an update today on the investigation into a horrific crash near Carberry last year. RCMP say they will include details about a decision regarding laying charges in the crash that left 17 people dead, and further investigational details that they were not able to share before. This update comes just over a week after the one-year anniversary of what was the deadliest bus crash in Manitoba history. A bus carrying 25 people, most of them seniors from the Dauphin area, was hit by a semi on the Trans-Canada at Highway 5. The group was heading to a casino near Carberry. Police have said the semi had the right of way. CBC is going to live stream the news conference from RCMP at 10 o'clock this morning at cbc.ca/Manitoba. A painting at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, Kayumuk, believed to be by world-renowned Anishinaabe artist Norval Morrisseau, is a fake. Earlier this month, David Voss pleaded guilty to running an art fraud ring out of Thunder Bay. In an agreed statement of facts, Voss identifies the WAG painting as one of hundreds his group created. Thunder Bay police say it has been investigating the operation since 2019. Detective Sergeant Jason Ryback says they flagged the painting in Winnipeg early on because of the way it was signed.
The early indicators for us were the black dry brush. The black dry brush signature on the back of the paintings was identified as a problematic issue with Norval Morrisseau paintings. And so we knew that painting in particular had that.
The painting, which had been donated to the WAG more than 20 years ago, hasn't been on display since 2013. The gallery says it is in storage. Ryback says police aren't in a position to seize all of Voss's fraudulent paintings because of issues with storage. Morrisseau, who died in 2007, is known as the founder of the Woodland School of Art. As of today, Mark Rutte has been formally appointed the next Secretary General of NATO. Rutte will take over from Jens Stoltenberg. He's scheduled to leave office in October. Rutte, the outgoing Dutch Prime Minister, will be in charge of the world's largest security organization as Russia continues to wage war with Ukraine. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A new group in Brandon is helping people who are deaf connect and get more support. It's called Deaf Connections and teaches American Sign Language. Tammy Lumax, who is deaf, has been going to these meetings for about 5 months.
Give the community a chance for other people that are deaf, that there will be more interpreters to help them out. Again, maybe get them out of the community and not let them being stuck inside to get them out.
So far, about 24 people gather for those monthly meetings, but the group is growing so quickly, Brandon Deaf Connections is going to add more meetings for July. What started as an after-school club for youth and elders in northern Manitoba has turned into a ribbon skirt club. 2 cousins from Pimicikmak Cree Nation completed their skirts just in time for grad. Hannah Benson hopes the culture teachings in and out of school will carry on.
It wasn't easy because it is my home. I was born and raised there, but hopefully it'll burn itself out and Mother Nature won't be angry with us. and we'll be.
I hope I could see more of the language coming out, more people having it maybe as their first language even, learning a lot more. So we just keep it through our generations with the people. We can just keep it with us, keep it close.
And the cousins are going to wear their homemade ribbon skirts as they graduate tomorrow from R.D. Parker Collegiate in Thompson. It was a moment to remember. We will find you acting on your best. Some 300 students graduating from Maples Collegiate last night. Chelsea Marinas is originally from the Philippines.
Seeing like all the different countries and like children my age experiencing like I've just seen how grateful I am for like everything I have around me and that I don't have to experience what other people are experiencing. And I always think about how lucky I am that I am here today, you know, with a good education.
Chelsea plans to go to the University of Manitoba to study education. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Okay, got to finish it. I can't handle it. Everybody wants to rule the world. There.
Perfect.
Ta-da! Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, while we were thinking about young people and the future, we started actually a series of conversations on the show this week. If you were with us Monday, we were talking about how to help young people find what they want to do in the future. There's a special career camp going on this summer to help people identify, you know, what careers are out there, what you might want to do. It's in the face of some of the highest unemployment rates for youth that we've seen in this country. The highest rate since 2016, in fact, outside pandemic years. So we're going to have another conversation about that coming up on the show. But it has us all thinking about the question we're focusing the series on this morning, which is, what was your first job? So let's go around the team table here. Crystal Lee's even joined in. She's standing by with business news. Hi, Crystal Lee.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So what was your first job?
My first official job was at Subway. I was a sandwich artist.
Nice.
And yeah, and I stayed working there for like a good 3-4 years. Like I started at 15, I think I ended at 19, and I still have best friends that I met working at Subway.
I love that. Abby, how about you? What was your first job?
My first job was a studio assistant at one of the state radio stations in Nigeria. And it's just one lovely experience. A few months, I never went in for my paycheck because I was just enjoying what I was doing.
I love that.
I didn't know I was going to get paid.
Isn't that the best? That's so good. I was demonstrating food at a local store, right? You know, standing in the aisle with a tray of crackers saying, try this. Would you like to try this product? That kind of thing. So trained me well for approaching people in my journalistic life. And Corey Funk's in studio here. Just I said we're going around the team table. So Corey, what about you?
I worked for a commercial painting company. I didn't actually paint. I just delivered paint I went to the store, picked up the paint and delivered it to job sites.
Where did that take you? To some interesting places?
Yeah, very interesting places. Actually, there was once they got the contract to paint a bunch of gurneys at the morgue.
Oh.
And my job was to go pick up the gurneys to bring back to the shop to paint. But every once in a while, the gurneys were occupied.
No.
Yeah. So that that was a weird thing, and
so teenage Corey had to gently and respectfully
move the occupant. With me and the security guard would move onto another gurney respectfully, gently, and it was just like a thing. They're like the security guard's like, oh, I guess we got to move it. So 18-year-old Corey was like, okay, and we just went to the freezer and moved them over, and yeah.
Who expected that? You were learning much different skills than teenage Marcy with the crackers in the hall.
When I saw the duties as assigned in my little contract, I didn't expect that would be one of them.
What was your first job, and what skills did you learn on that job? It'll be part of a conversation we're going to have a little bit later on the program. But you can call us now, 788-3205. Now let's turn to the team for what their jobs are today, and that means Abby is starting with the forecast here.
Right now, it is 13 in the city. Another cool day across the province. We're expecting clearing through the morning with light northerly breeze. The high for today will get to 21, slightly below seasonal average. Heading west to Brandon, we are at 12 degrees at the moment, mainly clear. We'll be seeing a high of 21. Some light breeze would also be coming with that. And then tonight, the skies will clear up, dropping to 9 degrees. North in Thompson, it is currently 6 degrees. You're seeing some Clear skies at this time. You get to a high of 19. Churchill is at 7 degrees at the moment. Partly cloudy. Highs also around 19. Dauphin at 11 degrees, heading to a high of 20. For Gimli at 12 degrees. Interlake region will see some clear skies this morning. Light winds from the north. High of 20. Steinbach at 13 and Morris at 13. Both heading to highs of 21.
All right, Abby, thank you.
You're welcome.
Corey.
Yeah, really the biggest issue out there this morning is on north and southbound Keewatin. Totally closed because of a fire this morning. It's shut down between Tyndall and Burroughs. Police say that emergency crews were called to the fire around 3:30 this morning, and they expect that closure to be it could last for quite a while. So we'll see how long that lasts for. I'll keep an eye on that. And if you see something else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'm curious what kind of havoc that might be causing in traffic. Let me know if you see what's going on. 204-788-3093.
Well, as you head back to the control room, make sure you find out from Abby how much money we're splitting, because he loves his radio job, so he doesn't. He loves it so much he's missing his paycheck.
I'll
Just
take
give
whatever.
It to us.
Yeah, exactly.
We split it.
I'll take it.
Look at him. He turned away. All right. Crystal Lee is here, as mentioned, and as you heard, to talk business news. Let's talk about the latest data that shows inflation ticking up last month. Can you break it down for us, Crystal Lee, and what it means for the Bank of Canada?
Yeah, so inflation unexpectedly surged in May, and this data comes just less than 3 weeks after the Bank of Canada cut interest rates for the first time in 4 years. And this could caution the Bank of Canada against a second consecutive interest rate cut next month, as policymakers wait to confirm whether the latest setback is temporary or not. So when you break down the numbers, inflation rose 2.9% last month compared to a year ago, and that's up from 2.7% in April. So it was largely due to higher prices for services led by cellular services, travel, tours, rent, and air transportation. Rent rose almost 9% on a yearly basis, and food is going up in price again. So food inflation rose slightly to 2.4% from 2.3% in April, and grocery prices increased 1.5% from a year ago, and that is the first acceleration since June of last year. And so, Marcy, this data breaks a 4-month string of easing price pressures. So for more on this, we spoke to Stephen Polotz, who is the former governor of the Bank of Canada.
That's not what we were looking for, eh? But I think all the conditions are there, and so it's only a matter of, time and patience for things to fall together. And for one thing, I think companies are busy deploying new technology, digitalizing their companies, and adding a layer of AI to help manage the companies. This is going to make cost reductions widespread through the economy. The fourth industrial revolution is just getting going.
Yeah, so an interesting take there from him. And Marcy, some economists say an interest rate cut next month isn't out of the question. June inflation data is set to be released on July 16th, just over a week before the Bank of Canada's July 24th interest rate announcement.
Let's go to another story in business news this morning. There's a new report out that says that Canadians are favoring domestic investments too much. What does that mean? What can you tell us?
Well, this report from investment firm Vanguard Canada says Canadian investors are overweight in their domestic holdings at the expense of foreign equities, leaving them with increased exposure to certain risks. So it says many Canadian investors have too much of a home bias, referring to a global phenomenon where investors favor domestic equities. And the report says Canadian securities make up only 2.6% of the global market, but account for about half of Canadian portfolios. Here's Sal D'Angelo, who's with Vanguard Canada.
They're familiar with the companies in their local markets. They can see them. They use them on a daily basis, so they understand them, and they tend to overweight their portfolios because it's investments they understand. So I think that's probably the biggest driver for most investors.
So Vanguard says a reasonable asset allocation for Canadian investors would be 30% Canadian equities and 70% international equities. And it says that recommendation is based on historical evidence, the benefits of diversification, and pension investors.
And finally this morning, why could people in the future have to pay for their favorite podcasts?
Well, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the New York Times is working to move its top podcasts behind a paywall as the company looks to make some fresh revenue from that format. So the publisher is exploring making only the 3 most recent episodes of The Daily available to non-subscribers, and making new episodes of its serial show exclusive to subscribers for an initial period. So The Daily routinely ranks among the top podcasts on Spotify and Apple. And the plans are still evolving, though it might change. Of course, podcasts are very popular and offer a way for news organizations to expand the reach of their journalism. And after years of heavy investment in podcasting, many media companies are now planning for the future of the format and how it can best serve their core business. So The Times is expected to gradually move more shows behind a paywall with the goal of eventually tying most, if not all, to a subscription service.
What are the numbers saying this Wednesday morning?
In Europe, stocks are high. .46 a.m. and temperature in the downtown area. Well, Tia Wood has music for us this morning. Tia Wood comes from a musical family. Grammy Award-winning ensemble Northern Cree. But now, Tia's moved to LA to pursue her own musical career. And the move's been exciting, but also lonely, she says at the same time, leaving her wanting to reconnect with her community in Northern Alberta. And this song is about that desire for that connection. This is Tia Wood on CBC. It's called Dirt Roads. Tia Wood and Dirt Roads on CBC. 11 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Thank you for joining us this morning. Up next on the program, it's interesting because earlier this hour we were talking about anxiety. But overall, when you're thinking about your mental health, your wellness, have you thought about your social health? How do you take care of that? Do you even know why that's important or where to begin? Well, up next on the show, that's the topic of our mental health column with Mark Hennick.
Hi there.
So how are we defining social health and why should we take care of it?
Well, social health is really the dimension of our overall well-being that arises from connection and community. So while physical health is all about your body and your mental health, of course, is about your mind, your social health really centers around your relationships. It includes having meaningful connections with family, friends, coworkers, community, and it helps you to feel supported, valued, loved. To understand the benefits of good social health, I spoke about it with Kasley Killam. She's a Harvard-trained social scientist and the author of the new book, The Art and Science of Connection.
Social health is about your relationships and your sense of community. Decades of research have shown that people who have meaningful connections have lower risk for things like heart disease, depression, diabetes, dementia, and also actually have longer lifespan.
So what it really comes down to is that maintaining and improving your social health is good for your physical well-being because it's been linked to things like stronger immune response, longer lifespan, and being socially healthy helps your mind because it's linked to better cognitive functioning and fewer depressive symptoms.
Yes, we've done some interviews about the impact loneliness can have on a person. Can you elaborate on that? What happens in the absence of good social health?
Well, on that, you really can't be fully healthy if you don't have a name to write down as your emergency contact, right? Because health is so much more than just mental or physical. Health is social. Research has found that loneliness is actually a risk factor for dementia. If you're in poor social health, then you're more likely to develop heart disease and diabetes. Your risk of stroke goes up by a third. Connection is as vital to our survival as food and water. But the trends tell us that we're becoming more isolated.
We're seeing various trends that signal that social health is suffering among a lot of people. 330 million people worldwide go weeks at a time without speaking to a single family member or friend. People in general have fewer friends than they have in previous decades, and they spend less time with their friends that they do have. Participation in community groups such as, book clubs or sports teams or local groups like that has declined over time.
And further to this, a 2019 survey indicated that about half of adults felt as if no one knew them well. I think that's actually a powerful question that we should all ask ourselves from time to time. How many people really know me? If you can't think of anybody offhand, then it's hard for me to imagine that you're in peak social health, especially if you don't quite realize it yourself yet.
So how do you take stock of it? How do you actually, know whether you're in good or poor social health?
Yeah, it can be slippery because you don't always know that you're in it when you're in it, right? So as I often suggest on here, you can't change what you don't measure. So start by paying attention. Some people need lots of casual connections around them, what are called weak ties. But some other people require fewer yet deeper relationships. So observe your natural reactions. Notice how you feel before, during, after social engagements of different sizes. Do big crowds excite you or do they exhaust you? When you need to recharge, do you do that by taking time alone or by spending time maybe with a few people who are very close to you? Or do you rather go off and get lost in a crowd at a concert or a party? Do you like small, light chit-chat with the barista at the coffee shop? Or do you prefer to skip all that weather talk and get right to the deep, probing questions of your existence? I think what you're looking for in essence here is, what's your social status when you feel your best? What's going on for you socially when you feel your worst? And between those two polarities, how do you feel right now?
So once you've gathered the information you're talking about, do you have some strategies that someone can use to improve their social health if they find that it is, not where they'd like it to be?
Yeah, I think once you have a sense of your personal social profile, then you can start to move from where you are to where you want to be and really where you need to be. So you can think about knowing what works for you, what doesn't socially, what's actually happening for you on a day-to-day basis. Say maybe you've noticed that you feel you're most socially sustained after you've had a great dinner out with friends, or maybe a nice date night with your partner. But then looking back over the last 6 months or even a year, maybe you've only actually done that once or twice. So that can be your prompt to set yourself a social goal and start scheduling. Even if you don't know what or with who yet, put a placeholder in your calendar. You're going to go out and do something social at that date, at that time, and you'll figure out the details later. choosing to prioritize your social life like this and not neglect the time that's actually required to do that, that can be half the battle. And Casley Killam, she likens this to exercising your social muscles. And she talked to me about 4 strategies you can use.
The first strategy is to stretch. This is about stretching your social muscles by making new friends, expanding your social network. The second strategy is to rest. It's actually really important to rest your muscles in between reps, in between workout days, to allow your body to recover. And in that same way, it can be helpful to rest your social muscles. The third strategy is to tone your social muscle. You can tone your social muscles by going deeper and actually strengthening the bonds that you already have. The final strategy is to flex your social muscles. So in the same way that you flex your physical muscles to kind of show off your strength and enjoy the hard work that you've put in, you can flex your social muscles to enjoy the relationships and groups that you have if the quality is already high, and then to sustain those in the long term.
So stretch, rest, tone, and flex your social muscles. In essence, if we don't regularly exercise our social connectedness, then we run the risk of social atrophy. So make connection a priority.
So just to widen out the lens here on this conversation, what can communities do to cultivate better social health?
Well, I think if we want more socially healthy communities that benefit both all of us and each of us individually, then we need to work together on this. And if you're a community leader, really in any capacity, you can absolutely contribute to the health and well-being of the people around you through facilitating opportunities for fellowship and connection. And if you, as an individual person, are out there looking for social activities that interest you, but maybe you can't find what you're looking for, create it. You know, if you build it, they will come. Unless you have exceptionally niche interests, but I've noticed even then, there are almost certainly other people who share those interests, or who at least can get curious about them. And since nobody else has yet taken that first step, those other people, they might be out there feeling lonely and disconnected too. So why can't you be the one that everyone is waiting for?
Thanks for this week, Mark.
Thank you.
That's Mark Hennick, our mental health columnist here at CBC. I'm Marcy Marcuso. You're listening to the Morning Show Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. It's time for headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, 2 people were rushed to hospital this morning after being pulled from a burning townhouse. Emergency crews were called to the 800 block of Keewatin around 3:30 this morning. The fire and police crews are still on the scene. And for now, Keewatin is closed in both directions between Tyndall and Burroughs. We have a reporter on the scene, Megan Ketchison. She will bring us the latest coming up at 7:30. The Winnipeg Art Gallery, Kayumuk, is holding on to a fake painting. It was believed to have been the work of world-renowned Anishinaabe artist Norval Morrisseau, but Thunder Bay police have confirmed it is not authentic. Earlier this month, David Voss pleaded guilty to running an art fraud ring out of Thunder Bay. We're going to hear from WAG's CEO, Stephen Boris, in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, to reiterate then, closed Keewatin north and southbound, Tyndall and Burroughs, between Tyndall and Burroughs. So note that and stay away from that this morning on your drive. Otherwise, your commute should be fine. Let us know if not. 788-3093. And of course, that's outside of Highway 1 through Headingley because of the rail changes there. The rail improvements they're making. Some detours in place, both north and south. Also, both east and west. Also, you're going to find that Louise Bridge is closed until June 28th. So a couple more days for that closure. Call Corey if you need. 788-3093. 13 in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy, but we should clear this morning and have a daytime high of 21 degrees in Winnipeg. Well, in the next hour of Information Radio, you heard us talking about our first jobs. What was your first job? That's what a CBC producer went out to ask people yesterday as we continue our conversations about youth employment. What got you started? In addition, when an elder had to cancel a presentation at the school, a young person jumped in to help and created a presentation for their peers. We're going to hear from them and what that was like and what they shared. So stay tuned for that. And at 10 to 8, you've been calling us about this since it was in the news yesterday. The city may soon start collecting $9 for composting service, but that won't begin the service until 2030. We're going to talk to Councillor Mays about why he says it's necessary.
Today on The Current.
I think now is the right time in terms of the growth of the party, the strength of the party.
Alberta NDP MLA Shannon Phillips is leaving her job. She says polarization in politics has become too much to handle, especially after she was targeted by members of the Lethbridge Police Department. Shannon Phillips coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. For the first time, the hydroelectric plant in Churchill Falls, Labrador, is being monitored remotely. The last remaining workers have been evacuated from town. Wildfire is getting too close. Officials ordered everyone to leave yesterday. The CBC's Peter Cowan joins me from St. John's. Peter, what is the latest?
Well, the fire did what nobody hoped it would, and that's jump across the Churchill River. So for more than a week, this river has acted as a natural fire break to protect the town. But yesterday, there were high winds, warm temperatures. It really turbocharged this fire, propelling it across the river and right towards the town's airstrip. And the fire was so intense that water bombers couldn't do anything. They had to pull back for their own safety. That news forced all of the remaining essential workers who were still in the town of Churchill Falls to leave. Susan Chislett is one of them. She made the drive 3 hours east to Happy Valley Goose Bay.
It wasn't easy because it is my home. I was born and raised there, but hopefully it'll burn itself out and Mother Nature won't be angry with us and we'll be able to go back one day.
There is a little more hope today from fire officials. That's because there's finally some rain in the forecast, so they're hoping that that will really bring down this fire.
What about the power plant?
Yeah, so Churchill Falls is a company town. It's there to service the massive hydro plant. But when that plant was built in the 1960s, no one envisioned having to operate it remotely. So over the last week or so, they figured out a way to have some limited power output and limited control. Here's Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro President Jennifer Williams.
Certainly not ideal. It hasn't been done before, but that is what we're hoping that we should be able to do with implementation of this remote monitoring and very little remote operation ability.
Now, the fires are creating other problems, though. They've actually tripped the main power line between that power plant and Western Labrador, and it's unsafe for crews to be able to go in and reset that. So that means the town of Wabush has no power this morning, and they've been warned that it could be an extended outage. And until that power is restored, the iron ore mines in Labrador West can't operate either.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
The CBC's Peter Cowan in St. John's. A CBC News investigation is offering a glimpse into how Russia is evading sanctions to obtain the electronic parts it needs to build weapons. It involves a Caribbean shell company and the address of a home in suburban Toronto. CBC investigative reporter Ben McCoo has more.
My initial reaction was that this looked like a really egregious breach of Canada's Special Economics Measures Act. Now,
Jessica Davis is a former analyst at Canada's spy agency, CSIS.
Okay, so this is interesting.
I showed her Russian trade data CBC News obtained that reveals a British Virgin Islands company used a Canadian address in a plan to send $80 million worth of microelectronics to Russia. Parts like microprocessors that Russia uses to build its weapons. Canada and its allies sanctioned Russia's import of Western technologies to stall its arms making. U.S. Assistant Secretary Matt Axelrod leads a unit prosecuting the theft of that tech.
Russia has used front companies in order to procure items that it wants but can't get legitimately, and it's using front companies now to procure microelectronics.
Alberton Enterprises, Inc. is the company using that Toronto address. It received a license to operate in Ontario in 2015. We contacted its agent for service in Ontario, Edward Poboreshkin. His home address is the address listed in the data. In an email exchange, Poboreshkin denied any involvement with Alberton's business and said his last contact with it was 9 years ago, adding that his address is part of the public record, and he cannot control if anyone decides to use it. The RCMP said it hasn't laid any charges involving supplying parts to Russia. Ben Maku, CBC News, Toronto.
Kenya's President William Ruto is promising to quash what he calls treasonous protests. But angry demonstrators are back in the streets of Nairobi. Kenya Medical Association says at least 23 people were killed in protests yesterday. Wellington Ogala lives in Nairobi.
What the government did to deploy a lot of force on us, it wasn't good. They killed our colleagues and fellow youths. It's not okay. It's very bad. We are demonstrating peacefully. It's our right to demonstrate. It's in the Constitution.
Anti-tax protesters stormed the country's parliament building. They set some parts of it on fire. Politicians inside were forced to flee. Police fired tear gas and live ammunition at protesters, and the military was called in to help police overnight. Protesters are angry about new taxes being introduced at a time when Kenya is already struggling with a high cost of living. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is back in Australia as a free man. He stepped onto the tarmac in Canberra to a welcome from supporters. Assange spent 5 years in a UK prison and 7 years in London's Ecuador embassy. He was fighting extradition to the United States. Prosecutors accused him of breaching espionage laws. Here is Assange's lawyer, Jennifer Robinson.
In order to win his freedom, Julian pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit espionage for publishing evidence of US war crimes, human rights abuse and US wrongdoing around the world. This is journalism. This is the criminalization of journalism.
Assange is a divisive figure. Some say publishing secret U.S. military records endangered lives. Others call him a free speech hero. Flooding in parts of the U.S. Midwest is threatening roads, bridges, and dams. Days of heavy rain prompted flood alerts and warnings across several states. Thousands of people have been forced to leave their homes, and tens of thousands of customers have lost power. Freelance reporter Steve Futterman has more.
The flooding continues in the upper Midwest, impacting a number of states, including Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Minnesota, where Governor Tim Walz says conditions could still get worse.
We're not out of the woods yet. Water levels are still rising. We have not reached peak water levels in many of these communities.
There have been torrential rains in many areas since last week. In some locations, nearly 50 centimeters of rain have fallen. In Iowa, hundreds of homes have been damaged. Thousands of residents have been forced to leave. Those still in their homes are being told they could be next. Patrick Prorock is the emergency manager in Monona County.
Anybody living around the Little Sioux River or on the Missouri River should have a plan on how to get out as soon as possible.
And it's not just the floodwaters. Extreme heat has made the situation even more unpleasant. Dozens have had to be rescued. The floods have been blamed for at least 2 deaths. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Atlanta.
U.S. President Joe Biden is pardoning veterans convicted of having gay sex in the military. Thousands of people could be eligible. The military law they were convicted under was repealed in 2013. If approved for a pardon, the veterans could get their discharge status changed. Biden is making the announcement during the final days of Pride Month. A Moncton structural engineer has been suspended in 2 maritime provinces. Lawsuits allege there were design flaws in apartment buildings she designed. As Shane McGee reports, there are now calls for a broad review of her work.
I just want these buildings to be found.
Halifax structural engineer John Richardson says he's reviewed more than a dozen apartment buildings allegedly designed by Helen Theriault and concluded some are at risk of collapse. In May, the Moncton structural engineer was suspended by the body that regulates engineers in New Brunswick, pending a disciplinary hearing. The association cited allegations of, quote, serious deficiencies in the design of multiple buildings. It hasn't said how serious, how many buildings, or in what communities. Richardson's involvement began in December in southeast New Brunswick. The owner of a 63-unit apartment building in Dieppe wanted him to review the structure's plans after cracks were noticed in its foundation during construction. Building owner and Quest CEO Harold Daly says construction halted while temporary supports were added at Richardson's recommendation, followed by long-term reinforcement.
The building has been declared structurally safe.
Richardson says he began hearing from other building owners concerned about cracks and sagging concrete slabs. He says buildings he's aware of were shored up, saying the immediate danger has passed.
It's by far the most challenging thing I've had to deal with in my career.
His nearly 4-decade career has included work on buildings similar to ones he's reviewed. Lawsuits have been filed against Theriault's firm, Match Engineering. In court, Match admits some deficiencies, but denies other allegations and says it's not responsible for any damages. A lawyer representing Match declined to comment while the cases are ongoing. Shane McGee, CBC News, Moncton.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. One of the most read stories at cbcnews.ca about a former MP who said if an election was called tomorrow, he would run. That story, cbcnews.ca on our main page. I'm Marcia Young.
Wednesday morning, and you're with CBC. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. 13 degrees in downtown Winnipeg. Cloudy to start forecast in a moment, and this hour we're going to be talking about youth jobs. Earlier this week, we started a bit of a series of conversations about the fact that the youth unemployment rate is the highest it's been since 2016 in this country. So what was your first job? And what skills did it teach you? We're going to hear a little bit of that this hour, and we'd love it if you call us and share. 788-3205. Also, we're going to talk to a Winnipeg student who jumped in to do a presentation for her school when a guest canceled. So how did this student pull together that presentation so quickly? We'll find out. And at 10 to 8, the city may soon start collecting a $9 fee for a composting service that won't begin till 2030. Councillor Brian Mays will join us to talk about why he thinks it's something the city needs to do. And speaking of calls, when that was in the news yesterday, that story about the $9 collection starting next year potentially, a lot of you started calling our listener line. So we're going to hear some of those calls this hour as well as we talk to Councillor Mays. Right now, though, speaking of news, Heather Wells is in with developing news. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, 2 people were pulled out of a burning townhouse early this morning and rushed to hospital. Emergency responders were called to the 800 block of Keewatin around 3:30 this morning. Police say a total of 8 people were taken out of that townhouse. No word yet on the condition of the 2 victims. For now, as emergency crews are still in the area, Keewatin is closed between Tyndall and Burroughs. We're going to get an update today on the investigation into a horrific crash near Carberry last year. RCMP say they will include details about a decision regarding laying charges in the crash that left 17 people dead, and further investigational details they were not able to share before. The update comes just over a week after the 1-year anniversary of what was the deadliest bus crash in Manitoba history. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather. Well, let's get into what's happening this morning in terms of the forecast. Some of the sky conditions, actually, Abby, across the province have just shifted a little.
Yes, let's just look at Brandon. Brandon at 12, mostly cloudy. Dauphin is seeing light rain at this moment with 10 degrees, though it's going to clear later, and we'll be seeing a high of 21. Similar condition for most part of the south. We're currently hovering around 12 and 10 degrees from all the way from Brandon down to Maurice. Maurice seems to be the one at 13 at the moment, but all heading to highs of 21. But right now, Winnipeg, it is 13 and cloudy. We're going to see a clear morning later and then expect some breeze, and we'll touch a high of 21, which is quite slight cooler than the seasonal normal of 21 that we're supposed to be at this time of the year. And for the night period, we will see some clear skies and light winds from the north becoming calm this evening. But right now, it is 13 in Winnipeg.
So 21's today. What's our seasonal high usually at this time of year?
25.
Okay, so we're 4 degrees below it.
Below.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Can feel it this morning, although it's kind of cold in the studio, so I might be skewed. Let's get to what's happening on the morning commute with Corey Funk.
Yeah, just got off the phone with Megan Ketchison, our reporter, who's actually on scene at that fire on Keewatin. Originally, it closed. Keewatin closed both northbound and southbound from Tyndall to Burroughs, but now she says northbound Keewatin is now open, but a reminder that it is still one lane because there actually also happens to be construction there. So northbound Keewatin now open between Tyndall and Burroughs. Southbound still closed, though, because of that fire. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that throughout the morning. As well, got a call from Mike, who's starting some work with his crew, chipping westbound Selkirk from McPhillips to about the tracks or so today. So he says Selkirk, which does need a lot of work as a road, so he's happy to be working on that. It says people will still be able to go around. It just might be a little bit slow going, so stay left. It's going to be on the curb lane. Yeah. Hi, Mike. Thanks for calling. Thanks for the work you do, because Selkirk, I know, definitely needs some work. So if you do see anything else going on out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call. Be like Mike, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned earlier this week, we kicked off a bit of a series of conversations here on Information Radio about youth employment and jobs. On Monday, we were exploring a camp where careers are introduced to high school students here in Manitoba. Right now, as I mentioned, the unemployment rate for young people in the country is the highest it's been since 2016, according to Statistics Canada. That's outside of the pandemic years. So today on the show, we turn our attention to inspiration and skill building as we ask, what was your first job? CBC producer Kalkadan Mulugeta went out to ask people over at the University of Winnipeg.
Misha Cook-Libin. My first job, I worked at Plato's Closet on St. James.
My name is Dhruti. I'm a student at the University of Winnipeg, and I just graduated actually a few days back. My first job was as an uncertified healthcare aide, where I used to help people suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's at old care homes. Since I graduated in biology, I wanted something in my field just to gain some experience. So I decided to get whatever job that could be in the field of biology, and this one just happened to be easier to get.
Hi, my name is Sylvia. My first full job was at a day camp. I was a camp instructor.
What did you like about it?
It was very relaxed. It was just like playing with kids, making sure they eat. We go to parks, we go to like beaches. Like it was just a very chill job to have, and it was only for the summer as well. So it didn't mean like I had to balance that during school and everything.
It involves helping people out. That's something that I enjoyed the most. I was helping people suffering from dementia. It needed a lot of patience. However, I really enjoyed that I could help them out when their family wasn't able to.
I think it had a really good, like the management was really positive, and it was a good like first experience with like, they had a lot of different aspects like cleaning and like working cashier and stuff like that.
Was there anything you didn't like about the job?
Like even though it was very relaxed, we started around like 7ish and we wouldn't leave until like 6. So it was a very long hour, and like you'd have to stay awake. Like I like to take my nap, so I like having breaks, but if you're with kids, there's technically no break. So you were with them from like, we started at 7, but kids started coming at 8, and then they wouldn't leave. Like last kid would leave at like 6.
Sometimes the companies that I used to represent while working at the old folk home, they weren't too nice because they would just give you a bunch of clients, and then it would be too hard to, separate your time for every other patient. So then you would just feel guilty that I'm not giving a certain patient a lot of time. That's probably what it is.
Was there anything from the job that you learned that you still use today?
Yeah, patience. Like, just learning how to deal with different people. Those kids come from like different strokes of life, right? So every kid has something different that you have to deal with. Some people are like very chill, and then even just other counselors, like how they act and how you have to kind of like balance like what you like your values with their values, stuff like that. So just working with people and patience.
It was good for like working with coworkers and getting along, but also working with like different customers and like having different people come into the store.
Do you feel like that was a good first job to have?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it made me a good amount of money for the summer, and it still allowed me to have like my freedom. Like after I was done, I could do whatever I want, and I didn't work weekends. Now I have a job where I work weekends. So yeah, it's a good job, I think, for like someone who's looking for just a summer job and they're still in high school even.
So that was some of the responses that our producer Kalkalan Mulugeta got yesterday. She headed out talking to people about their first jobs. Now, just a note for people not familiar with one of the references in the tape, Plato's Closet is a store that buys and sells used clothing. So that was someone's first job. So what was yours, and what skills did you learn from that job? We're exploring this a little bit because, as I mentioned, youth unemployment is concerningly high. So call us and let us know. What did you learn from your first job? What was it? 788-3205. 204-788-3205.
Sound. The sound of silence.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Stereo or mono. The sound of resistance and cultural change. Listen to the innovative ways marketers are using sound around the world. Air quality, rule-breaking radio advertising on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
Bit of a traffic update for you here at 7:20. So now at the area where there's a fire that they're tending to and dealing with this morning, Megan Ketcherson's on site for us for CBC. There's been a change in the traffic situation. So this is on Keewatin between Tyndall and Burroughs. So now you have northbound and southbound open, but just one lane each in those directions, but you can get through. Still proceed with caution and call us if you need on the commute, 788-3093. Well, we've got sports coming up here in a few minutes' time, but first time for a little bit of music. And if you're thinking of adding a Canadian tune to your summer playlist, we have one you might want to choose from Ottawa-born and talented and pretty funny singer-songwriter Jamie Fine x Elijah Woods, who was on with Tom Power yesterday on Q. So if you want to hear that interview, you can check it out on the CBC Listen app. But here's some of the music. This tune's called Ain't Easy.
Baby, you're all I need. Baby, you're all I see. Missing the touch of your skin, I want it, babe. I'm on my knees, feeling you touching me. Baby, it's bittersweet. 'Cause I want it bad, but I never thought your touch would make me bleed. All you do is talk, what you say. Wanna walk away, baby, wait. Sick of all the games, girl, you play. But baby, loving you ain't easy. It's fire and then it's rain. It's fire and then it's rain. I say loving you ain't easy. Baby, you're what I crave, and I wouldn't wanna waste it. Late at night when I need more you, all damn night gonna need more you. Take me away. See, loving you ain't easy. But you're doing it just the same. You're doing it just the same. Whoa. Just need a little taste, baby, that's all it takes. Loving the touch of your body, baby, bring it over here. Loving it higher stays, loving until we hate, pushing until we break. Got all your heart, don't disappear. Loving you ain't easy. It's fire and then it's rain. It's fire and then it's rain. I said loving you ain't easy. Baby, you're what I crave, and I wouldn't wanna waste it. Late at night when I need more you, all damn night gonna need more you. Take me away. See, loving you ain't easy. But you're doing it just the same. You're doing it just the same. All you do is talk, what you say. Wanna walk away, baby, wait. Sick of all the games, girl, you play. But baby, all you do is talk, what you say. Wanna walk away, baby, wait. Sick of all the games, girl, you play. Loving, late at night when I need more you, all damn night gonna need more you. Take me away. See, loving you ain't easy. It's fire and then it's rain. It's fire and then it's rain. Late at night when I need more you, all damn night gonna need more you. Take me away. Loving you ain't easy.
Are you ready to share your music with the world? CBC Music's Searchlight Contest is on, looking for Canada's next breakthrough musical act. This could be your time to shine. Enter an original song for a chance to launch your music career and win some great prizes, including an industry showcase, a distribution deal, and musical instruments. Get ready to take it to the next level. CBC Music Searchlight 2024. Enter now at cbc.ca/searchlight.
Well, speaking of original music, coming up right here on Information Radio on CBC after 8.
After 2 months of intense competition, we've narrowed the path to your 3 grand finalists. They will battle it out for the coveted crown of
What we're listening to is a milestone moment for both Rainbow Stage and theater productions in Manitoba. Tomorrow night, Manitoba's first all-Filipino musical will make its stage debut. Still ahead on our show this morning, we'll go behind the scenes and we'll hear a chat with the show's creators. So that is coming up after 8 o'clock. We're talking about Mabuhay. A lot of people super excited about this. And so stay tuned. That is still ahead. Right now, it is 7:25 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3, 990 a.m. on the app or on YouTube with us this morning. And it's time for morning sports. Khalil Hassanali is in for Scott Regehr. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with football, actually, local. What's the latest in the Bombers getting ready for the matchup with Calgary this week?
Yeah, so unfortunately, when it rains, it pours when it comes to the Blue Bombers at the moment. The team already dealing with injuries, most notably Kenny Lawler. Now, Lawler's replacement, Carrick Wheatfall, is dealing with a knee injury, as is another key receiver, Dalton Schoen. Combine those injuries with a so far winless season, it might leave some fans feeling pessimistic, but head coach Mike Shea doesn't see it that way, though.
I think it's exciting. I don't like it for the guys that are down. Nobody does. Not the guys that are getting their opportunity. But now you're faced with a whole bunch of fresh faces that are finding their way, and the vets are working their ass off, and the coaches are working their ass off, and it's just a whole bunch of time well spent in a good cause to get your direction going, right? I think that's pretty cool to watch.
As of right now, it looks as though Josh Johnson or Jeremy Murphy will be filling in when the Bombers face off against the Stampeders. Let's end on a positive note, though, Marcy, and for everyone else wondering, the Bombers have started a season 0-3 and still made the playoffs. That was back in 2008.
Well, speaking of positive notes, a big win for Canada's men's soccer team yesterday over Peru at Copa America, and Abby's representing.
Ole, 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 ole.
I like it.
He's in his jersey this morning. Abby, you watched this game and you were noting not only the play but the heat, right?
Yeah, the heat was something yesterday. It stopped the game for a few minutes, and my point of the game was when one of the linesmen had it's more like a heat stroke because he passed out and they had to take him out.
Man, oh man. So good result, but some complications yesterday. What'd you make of the game, Khalil?
Yeah, so Jonathan David coming through for Canada in the 74th minute with a very nice goal off the post. The win is a real groundbreaker for Canada. It's their first ever Copa win, and it also is their first win over a South American opponent in 24 years, Marcy. Jesse Marsch gets his first victory as head coach of our national squad, and he said afterwards that it was a war of attrition.
I look at it more as the situation that the team was in. It was hot. It wasn't easy. You know, I said to him at halftime that we were in a difficult match, and we knew that. But the key was that so far we were bending but not breaking. We talked about wanting to make a big statement, to make history, to show that we're ready for bigger challenges. And we responded in the second half in a really good way.
Now, Marcy, more on that heat that Jesse Marsch as well as Abby were talking about being a massive influence on the game. No water breaks, but the temperature, it was north of 30 degrees without the humidity, and it's also going to be playing a part in their next game. So yesterday, Kansas City, Kansas, that was where the game was being played. Their next game on Saturday against Chile is going to be in Orlando, where the humidity is going to make it feel like it's 40 degrees. And they can't let the heat affect them for that one. It's very important for them. If they win against Chile, it would all but ensure the team, it would ensure the team a spot in the knockout stage.
Speaking of heat, of course, we've been talking about that for Paris, right? A lot of concerns. But your story this morning is about track and field athletes in Canada that have one last chance to book their ticket to Paris. So the Olympic trials are jumping off in Montreal.
5 days of competition. The organizing committee have done something pretty cool for this Olympic trials. They've broken each day into specific themes. So today is the hammer throw. So we have the heavy metal theme. Nothing better than a little rush to get the juices flowing on a Wednesday morning. If we're talking about the competition, though, there's been one name on top of the results for women in the last couple of years. That's Cameron Rogers. She spoke after one of her most recent wins in Oregon. She said it's all ramping up to this.
An Olympic year is always going to be absolutely huge, and I think to plan it out takes time and a lot goes into it. I mean, it's years of work in the making, and so coming into this season, we definitely wanted to build up to the big moment in Paris. We're just taking it one step at a time, looking to improve every meet and go in there and just be a force to be reckoned with.
Lots of track and field stars, Ethan Kasperg, Andre DeGrasse, Sarah Min, all in action throughout the weekend, Marcy.
All right, Khalil, thanks a lot.
Have a great day.
You as well. That's Khalil Hassanali filling in for Scott Regehr with sports this morning. Traffic, just a reminder, Keewatin, southbound and northbound is open except only one lane, both south and north. That is between Tyndall and Burroughs. So note that, and also give us a call if you see any other problems. We know that there's some road work being done, Selkirk, McPhillips to the tracks area as well. We got a call about that. 788-3093 if you do need to update anything. Well, coming up on the program, when an elder could not make a presentation at a local school, a student jumped in to make that presentation to classmates, and we're going to hear all about it in a lovely story right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. We do have mostly cloudy sky right now, but it'll clear out. We're going to see lots of sunshine today. Still a little on the cool side thanks to a north breeze. Our high about 21 this afternoon. Well, we are going to get an update today on the investigation into that horrific crash near Carberry last year. RCMP say they will include details about a decision regarding laying charges in the crash that left 17 people dead. And further investigational details that were not able to be shared before are expected to be released as well. This update comes just over a week after the one-year anniversary of what was the deadliest bus crash in Manitoba history. A bus carrying 25 people, most of them seniors from the Dauphin area, was hit by a semi on the Trans-Canada at Highway 5. The group was heading to a casino near Carberry. Police have said the semi had the right of way. CBC will live stream the news conference at 10 o'clock this morning on our website. Well, 2 people were pulled from a burning townhouse early this morning. It happened on Keewatin in Tyndall Park. And CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is there right now and joins us live. Megan?
Well, if you look at this, the middle of this townhouse complex, you see just charred wood from this fire early this morning. It started at about 3:45. Fire crews arrived here. They managed to pull 2 people out, and those 2 have been taken to hospital. We don't have a sense of their condition. This is right in between Burroughs and Tyndall. Now, when I was speaking with the fire chief, he said when they got here, there were flames just rising up from the upper story suite. This is one of those townhouses where you've got suites on the lower end and then wooden stairs up to the second floor. He said that it was in the second floor, but it's also spread down to the lower levels. 8 people had to get out as well, according to Winnipeg police, and a number of the suites had to be evacuated while they fought the fire. Now, it is out. Fire crews have gone, and traffic has reopened on Keewatin north and southbound, but this area is the townhouse. Currently, the cause is under investigation. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. The Winnipeg Art Gallery, Kamayuk, is holding on to a fake painting. It was believed to have been the work of world-renowned Anishinaabe artist Norval Morrisseau. The painting, called Astral Plane Scouts, was donated to the gallery in 2000. Thunder Bay police have since confirmed it is not authentic. Earlier this month, David Voss pleaded guilty to running an art fraud ring out of Thunder Bay. Stephen Boris is the Winnipeg Art Gallery's CEO.
The greatest misfortune is the impact of this on the artist's legacy and his family and what that does. But there are many victims: the artist, his family, people that purchased works in good faith from dealers, galleries that accepted works in good faith.
The gallery says the painting hasn't been on display since 2013. For now, it is being held in storage. Boris says fakes and forgeries aren't anything new in the art world, but the gallery will learn from this. A former Liberal MP says he is considering a bid to replace Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as the Liberal Party leader after federal Conservatives won a by-election in the Liberal stronghold of Toronto St. Paul's this week. You can hear more on this story as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. A Brandon woman has started a group to address what she says are barriers to being deaf in her city. Terry Antoniou says it has been frustrating. She has limited resources, and if she needs an interpreter, they have to come from Winnipeg. So she started Brandon Deaf Connections, a coffee group that meets once a month to practice American Sign Language. Antoniou says it's not just people who are deaf, but anyone with a disability feels isolated.
Lots of barriers. You have to start breaking them down somehow. This is my way of breaking down some of the barriers.
Antoniou says Brandon Deaf Connections is going to have 3 meetings in July because the group is growing so fast. 2 cousins will honor their culture at their high school graduation in northern Manitoba this week. Davy Blacksmith from Pimachikamak Cree Nation made her own ribbon skirt, beaded earrings, and her grad cap. Hannah Benson, also from Pimachikamak, will wear a ribbon skirt she made. The ribbon skirts were crafted as part of an after-school club at the high school, and Benson says she is grateful.
I feel kind of honored that we would be able to do something like this for our communities and for the people who weren't able to do it. Like some people, you ever hear about the people in the schools that they get their regalia taken away, and this was given to us from our school. And I think we're really happy that we have this opportunity.
The cousins graduate from R.D. Parker Collegiate in Thompson tomorrow. Well, moments of joy and happiness across a school stage last night. 300 students graduating from Maples Collegiate. Mina Habib is originally from Afghanistan.
Somebody from this generation that's able to go to school, all these global issues just make me more grateful to be able to even have this and to go to school, to graduate, to be able to learn, and to have teachers who are willing to teach and just not taking something small as going to school for granted.
Habib plans to study science and continue into the medical field. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Let me just say that the grads of 2024 are far more stylish than anyone.
I know.
Back in the day, I think. And I'm sorry, but I'm seeing all the tailored suits, cool looks,
beautiful dresses.
Oh, wow, right? To the ground dresses, gowns. Just unbelievable style out there, I have to say.
I know. I think I wore a beige dress to my grad.
I know. I had some short, strapless, taffeta blue thing on for mine. All right. Let's get into what's going on in the forecast. The forecast, of course, for someone's grad day today. Abby, what's it like?
Yeah, it's going to be another cool one. So it's not going to be a sweaty grad day for you. Cool across the province. 13 degrees under cloudy skies. We're expecting clearing this morning. A gentle breeze from the north. The highs for Winnipeg would get to 21, slightly below the average we are supposed to be at this time of the year. Brandon is currently at 12 degrees and mostly cloudy. Today, you would see this clouds clear and then you get to a high of 21. That would come with some light breeze also, which would make the evening feel kind of calm for you. Not in Thompson, 9 degrees, mainly sunny at the moment. Today, you'd see some clouds roll in and then it's going to stay mainly cloudy with a chance of afternoon showers. High of 19. Churchill is currently at 8 degrees and partly cloudy. You get to highs of 19 today. Dauphin at 10, seeing light rain at the moment, and we'll be getting to a high of 21. Gimli currently at 12 degrees. For the Interlake region today, we'll see some clear skies this morning, some light winds, and then we'll get to a high of 20. Tonight, a few clouds, and then that would clear up as you get into close to the midnight period. Steinbach is sitting at 12 degrees and cloudy. Expect this mostly cloudy conditions to clear up by the noon period, and we'll see highs around 21. And finally, Morris, currently 13 degrees and cloudy. Today, the clouds will be clearing by late morning, and then the highs will touch 21, and you will see clear skies tonight. In Winnipeg, 13 degrees, heading to a high of 21.
Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
All right, let's get into the commute with Corey.
Yeah, just a reminder that the northbound, southbound Keewatin from Tyndall to Burroughs was closed. It's now open both ways, but northbound, keep in mind that it is down to one lane because of construction, so it may still be a bit slow going. Another reminder, Mike called. He and a crew are starting some work very soon on westbound Selkirk, starting from McPhillips, kind of working way west towards the tracks there. They're going to be chipping up the curb lane, he says, so keep left to get around that. You should still be able to get around, but it might be a little bit more slower than usual. So Selkirk work, you probably have to go pretty slow anyways because it's pretty potholy. So that work is much needed. Thanks for that call there, Mike. Thanks for the work you do. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line and let me know what you're seeing, whether you're walking, biking, driving. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Now, I got to know, earlier this hour when you were talking about Mike calling, you said, be like Mike.
Yeah.
Do you know what that refers to?
You know what? I feel like there was, you know what, actually, is it a basketball thing?
Yeah,
Okay,
2006. Yeah, Michael Jordan. There was a song, Be Like Mike.
Was there a movie
Commercials?
too?
Oh, many movies, but I think, for sure. But it was a big slogan. So
Okay, there we go.
I like that we've given it to, I think his moniker normally, this Mike for Winnipeg it's Water Truck Mike, right?
Maybe. I don't know if the water truck Mike, I don't know if it's the same guy as the guy who does chipping with the crew. Not totally sure.
You know, we've elevated you, though, to an NBA superstar this morning. All right, next on the show, speaking of superstars, a new musical at Rainbow Stage is about to make history. This song is going to be performed at Rainbow Stage for the first time tomorrow night. What a moment it's going to be. It's called I'm My Own Star. It's one of the songs in Mabuhay, Manitoba's first all-Filipino musical. Now, the show follows a group of contestants in a high-stakes reality Filipino singing competition, and it premieres tomorrow night, but the musical has been in development for 5 years, including public and private workshop readings, one of which sold out during Winnipeg's Fringe Festival a few summers back. CBC's Chidi Akuma got a sneak peek at the show last night and a chance to sit down with creator Joseph Savillo, who I can't imagine how he's feeling right now. Here's part of their conversation.
It's been years in development, finally coming on stage later this week. How does it feel to know the opening night's around the corner?
That's actually one of the most toughest questions to answer. It's all the feelings in the world, a mixture of huge excitement, anxiety, anticipation, but I've worked so hard for the last 7 years, so I'm really, really confident that we're going to open with a big bang.
Tell me a bit about the show. What can people expect to see?
So basically the show, we've transformed, as you can see, Rainbow Stage into a live reality TV set of a singing competition. And so what they expect to see is high energy pop dancing from our 3 hip-hop commercial dance choreographers, incredible pop vocals, but all the styles of music range from classical, musical theater, hip-hop, R&B, original OPM music. I think it's high-level entertainment from all the vocalists that we have. We have Andrea Mackasat from Broadway, who originated the role of Anne Boleyn in Six the Musical. We have Ma'an Denisho, who originated the role of Kim in Miss Saigon. We have 10 of the best triple threat performers in the city that you won't be able to keep your eyes off of. And so what I want the audience to expect and see is high-level musical theater entertainment.
And where did that inspiration to have like a reality music competition, where did that come from?
I actually grew up in singing culture competition. And so one thing that's super unique about the Filipino community is that we love to sing. And usually in a family, if you have that talent, the family encourages the daughter or the son to pursue singing. And so growing up in singing competition culture, a lot of Filipinos actually work really hard to sing really well so they could win these competitions. And so I wanted to make a reality show because a lot of times in the grand finals of a reality show, we could go through flashbacks of some of the contestants to see how they got to where they are. And I thought that was a really good structure and a machine to use in order to tell a story through the art form of musical theater.
And as you were writing the script and creating the show, were you brushing up on your reality TV knowledge at all?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm super inspired by shows like Star in a Million, ASAP from the Philippines, as well as X Factor. American Idol is I'm a huge fan of. I followed every single season. And so it really is just a take and an inspiration from all those reality shows.
Can you tell me a bit about the name, why you wanted to name it that?
Yeah, so mabuhay is a word that is commonly used as a form of a welcome, just as how people in Hawaii say aloha. The exact definition means live long and long live. But the way that I put a dash in between the words ma and buhay, it was a sentimental reason because it means mother and life. And as you can see, the set is purple because that was my mom's favorite color.
That's such a beautiful homage to her.
Yes.
Yeah. And you have an all-Filipino cast. This is the first time this has happened for a musical in Manitoba.
Yes.
Why was it important for you to have that?
Well, there was a call to action for all theater companies to really feature its Indigenous populations. And so with Winnipeg having the highest population of Filipinos per capita in the entire country, it was only fitting to write a show about Filipinos to amplify the incredible talent that are the Filipinos in the city. And so out of a cast of 22 in this show, 20 of the cast members are all from Manitoba. We have one from Toronto and one from Vancouver. So, yeah.
And I feel like that's such a, I don't know if the word is heavy, but it's such an important thing to be the first to do it. What does that feel like for you?
You know, I mean, one would think that it's a heavy weight to carry on the shoulders, but it was time for it to happen a long time ago. So a fun fact is that Mabuhay is actually is part of the 70th anniversary of Rainbow Stage, and it's the 150th show of this institution. So we're just so happy to finally break in after the 70 years. And it doesn't feel heavy. In a way, it actually feels quite light to be here on this day and to see the work that those 22 actors are giving us.
And as like a member of like our theater community here in Winnipeg and in Manitoba, what has your own experience when it comes to diversity and representation been?
Yeah, like growing up, I was the only male Filipino artist pursuing this, maybe with one other colleague of mine. But with a population of, again, with the most population of Filipinos, there was an underserved community there that needed to be engaged with. And so now from when I started at 13 years old in 1997 on this stage, I was only one person, and now we'll see 22. And beyond that, there was over 200 submissions for the show nationwide. So
wow.
I definitely think it sparked change.
What have you been hearing from people in the community about the show?
In the community and in the cone that we're in right now, a lot, especially with the cast, they really resonate with the story. It's the first time they've been part of a project where every scene hits home. They're bawling, they're laughing. And I think that's what it's all about, right? It's to be able to see yourself in the mainstream media and the mainstream stages. And so I think it's really validating as an artist and as a writer to know that your work is connecting to the people that it was meant for. But again, tonight will be very special because it's our first invited dress, so we'll really get a better idea of how the story connects with Filipinos and non-Filipinos alike.
What do you hope people take from the show tonight, or even on Thursday when it opens? What do you want people to leave with?
I want people to be inspired. I want them to be singing the tunes of the show as they leave. I want them to come again and again and again because it is a limited time run. We only have 18 shows from June 27 to July 14. And this is the time. This is a 7-year project that is now here. And I want people to be excited about it as if it was a Broadway show that's landed here, because that's my goal. I want this to be the first show ever to land on Broadway from Manitoba.
And just to go off what you said about you want people to leave with the songs in their head, is there a particular song that's been stuck in your head?
Well, it's different every single time, but I think the way that I've approached the music, every song has an attempt to have an earworm in it. So when I ask the cast, they're all different kinds of songs. There's a song called Wake Me Up, there's a song called Key League, there's a song called Cut. But it's different depending on your love for music. So we'll see. I'll ask the patrons what they think.
Are there plans to take this show on tour at all?
Well, my dream plan is to take it on tour and have companies all over the world and to have it land on Broadway. As of right now, we're in the stage right now where we're building the first blueprint for which we can sell that package. So I just hope that somebody that has the connections will come to see this run. And we'll hopefully have those conversations either during the run or post-run. I just want people in Winnipeg to embrace the show. It's the first all Winnipeg Filipino cast made in Manitoba musical. It's taken me 7 years. I just don't want anyone to miss this. I want people to see it and understand why it took me 7 years to create this musical.
Joseph Civillo, a creator of Mabuhay, in conversation there with CBC's Chidi Kuma. So the show's premiere is tomorrow night on Rainbow Stage, and it looks like it's going to cooperate weather-wise. The weather is sunny tomorrow and a high of 24. Today, a high of 21 degrees, and we should see some clearing this morning.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
It is 11 minutes now to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Thanks for joining us this morning. Well, a couple of traffic notes here. Southbound Keewatin is closed. So Megan Ketcherson's on site. That's been moving back and forth, that information about what's happening. There's been an early morning fire on Keewatin between Tyndall and Burroughs. That's the area affected. So we understand now northbound is still open one lane, except southbound now is closed. Also, Anne calling, just saying there's a whole bunch of deer in a yard on Jubilee near Lilac. So she's a bit worried they're going to try to cross there to the river. So it's the time of year where you just got to be careful with all that. Thanks for calling, Anne. 788-3093 is the traffic line if you want to reach us. Well, you were using a different number yesterday. You were reacting to news that Winnipeg may soon start collecting a $9 fee for curbside composting service that is expected to begin not until 2030. Brian Mays is councillor for St. Vital Ward and chair of the city's Water, Waste and Environment Committee, and he's here in studio. But before we have our discussion, here's what some of you called our listener line yesterday around this issue about.
Hello, my name is Cindy. I don't really need the city to collect my compost because I use my compost in my garden and on my lawn. However, if I look more globally, I believe that this would extend the life of our landfills. So in the long term, I would expect that the compost program would pay for itself. It is hard to pay for something that you're not going to receive until 2030, but $9 a year I will accept for the benefit.
Hello, Jocelyn Ward. I am against paying for composting, which will only go into effect in several years' time. We compost already. It's not an issue for us. The only issue would be for people in apartments, I imagine. And it would be really great to set up some kind of system for them. However, for single-family dwellings, I don't think it's an issue. People can just compost in their backyard, give it to their neighbors who garden, and everybody would be happy, and it costs nothing.
Hi, my name is Mary Holman. I was part of the pilot project for the 2 years that it ran in my neighborhood. My street happened to be picked. It was fabulous. Every week I had one small bag of garbage per week at the most, and everything else went into the food waste collection. And when it ended, I was very sad because now I'm throwing all this organic stuff in the garbage, and it just feels all wrong. I live in a multi-family dwelling now, so I won't be eligible for whatever program the city develops, which is also very unfortunate. But I fully support the city implementing the program. I wish the heck they would just get on with it. They've been talking and dithering about it for years and years, and other cities have figured this out. It can't be that hard. I am disappointed in the long time frame. I think it's far too slow. But the sooner we get this program going, the better.
All right, Councillor Mays, there's so much to chew on there. Thank you for being here. Let's start with the last comment. Why is it taking so long?
Yeah, that was a very representative sample of the calls and emails I get too.
Yeah,
not all in favor, and some of those in favor saying hurry up. I think I'll take some of the blame for it taking so long. I think a number of us were concerned about the cost when this first came forward 7 or 8 years ago. I think certainly I've shifted position. I would like to get this going. I think it's worth it in terms of climate change impact. So I think the staff are now somewhat cautious. Yeah, 2030 is a very long time frame to get to your curb. So we still hope to accelerate that a little.
The other question that was posed by that caller who was talking about this said, why can't we follow the lead of other cities? So Regina, they've bypassed the need for a processing facility which is what we're looking at here. We're going to have a processing facility. They're opting to use an outdoor pad to deposit the compost material. That's allowed Regina to move quicker. They're going to be able to implement the program, a new program, faster. Was that considered for Winnipeg?
Yeah, and it may be a one-word answer, and that word is smell, that you could do an outdoor pad at Brady and get going much more quickly, but the issue is smell, I think, and the residents nearby would be concerned. So that's why I think talking
like show me what's inside, or is it
an
empty?
option. They have an outdoor pad there. Compost Winnipeg uses that now. How big is it? Could it be expanded? Could we get there for 28 and 29 and then do something with an indoor facility? That's worth exploring because Regina got going more quickly, but it's an outdoor pad.
Got it. What would you say to the people who are saying we don't need this in Winnipeg?
I mean, we got a lot of that 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little less now. I mean, it's the cost of dealing with climate change to an extent. We're not going to solve all that, but and we have 100 years of room left in the landfill. It's not really pressure that we're running out of room. It's how do we reduce methane emissions? How do we do something on greenhouse gases? And this is the biggest emitter in Winnipeg. So it's worth. I think it's worth the cost to do that.
Where's the $9 going to go? Is it going towards actually creating a sorting facility, or where does our money go?
No, I wish it was only $9.
That seems kinda cheap,
$9 is just to get the carts. It's like to collect some money and then get the carts. This is going to cost probably 10 times that per year. I'd hope this report would give us a number. It doesn't, unfortunately. But yeah, no, the $9 is just to accumulate money for the carts. What this will cost to actually collect and process to be determined.
Okay, so if it's to be determined and we're already cash strapped on so many fronts in the city, should people be worried that the $9 they're putting forward, even just to get the carts, maybe won't even come to fruition?
I think it's more likely council will say, forget the $9 now and we'll borrow the money in 2028 or 2029 when we need the carts. We already had one vote on that, and that was the decision. But that's not fatal to the program. No, I don't. I think it'll come to fruition. The cost when it comes to fruition will be, that will be substantial. But at some point we make these commitments. I think we should live up to them.
What's the possibility in the future that if this all goes through and happens as at least the preliminary planning stages and discussions are looking, that the compost itself could be used as a revenue source for the city, the actual product itself?
I've been to the facility outside Montreal. I mean, I've been to the facility at the edge of Toronto. Yeah, there's certainly things you could do here, and we're hopefully working with the province, Minister Schmidt, on taking what we're currently flaring, the methane, and converting that to renewed natural gas. So yeah, I think there's a very good opportunity here to get some revenue from the compost.
It's interesting that you said years ago you take some responsibility for this not moving faster, and you also alluded to the fact that you feel like people's attitudes overall, Winnipeggers' attitudes have shifted as well. In what way? Like, what would have changed in your view years ago to now?
Somewhere Councillor Gilroy and former Councillor Jabassi are perhaps listening, saying we were always in favor of this. But I mean, maybe I'm more zealous about it now that I'm a convert. I think I realize, it's a cost. It's the equivalent of, I don't know, 6-7% on your property taxes, but it's a flat fee probably. I mean, I just think I realized we're not going to solve climate change here, but, we should be trying to do something here. This seems to be relatively low tech, something other cities are doing. It's, does it really impact me if I put the carrot peel in the compost bin, not the garbage bin? No, I can do that. So we have to learn that behavior. Yes, it's a cost. I get that. But I think, speaking personally, I've come around on it, and some of my colleagues have been a little more consistent. I'm glad I got a chance to mention them. But yeah, I think we have the votes to do something. What the details are to be determined.
So just before you go this morning, what is next in the political steps here? Friday is the meeting that we're watching?
Friday's Water Waste Environment Committee should pass there, should move forward through executive about 2 weeks later and get to council in mid-July. Unfortunately, this isn't the historic report one would want, saying it's going to cost this much, it's going to start on this date, but it's a half step forward at least, so we're not going backwards.
Appreciate you coming in this morning.
Thanks for having me.
That is Brian Mays, Councillor for St. Vital Ward and Chair of the city's Water, Waste and Environment Committee. If you have not yet weighed in on this, you can always call us, 788-3205, as you heard many people calling yesterday out of the news. It is 2 minutes to 8 o'clock. Speaking of news, Heather's here with our headlines.
2 people were rushed to hospital this morning after being rescued from a burning townhouse. Emergency crews were called to the 800 block of Keewatin around 3:45 this morning. That stretch of Keewatin between Tyndall and Burroughs had been closed for 4 hours. It has just reopened. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather. It is 13 in Winnipeg, a high 21. It should clear this morning for us, although we're going to stay at that 21, which is about 4 degrees below the seasonal normal for this time of year. Stay with us. World Report's coming up next on CBC. It's 1 minute to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. And a reminder, if you see anything else in traffic beyond what the issues on Keewatin between Tyndall and Burroughs due to that fire, please give us a call with an update, 788-3093.
On cue.
I'm Talia Schlanger, sitting in for Tom Power. Jodie Comer is an Emmy and Tony Award-winning performer who's famous for playing a Russian assassin on the show Killing Eve.
I don't like to be challenged. Do you want me to ask someone else? No.
She'll tell you about training for her new film and earning the confidence to play confident characters.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Alberta NDP MLA Shannon Phillips is leaving her jobs. He says polarization in politics has become too much to handle, especially after she was targeted by members of the Lethbridge Police Department. Shannon Phillips, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A wildfire is creeping dangerously close to the power facility in Churchill Falls, Labrador, and it has forced all staff to leave the plant. Now, for the first time, the plant is monitored remotely. No one is on the ground to make major changes. Jennifer Williams is the president of Newfoundland Labrador Hydro.
Certainly not ideal. It hasn't been done before, but that is what we're hoping that we should be able to do with implementation of this remote monitoring and very little remote operation ability.
Yesterday, 2 transmission lines were tripped. It knocked out power to Labrador City and the neighboring town of Wabush. Labrador City is getting some power back up from Quebec, but Wabush has been left without power overnight. Hydro crews say people there should prepare for extended outages over the next several days. Now to a community torn apart by wildfire 3 years ago. Lytton, British Columbia is struggling to rebuild, and the people who lost their homes have a warning for other Canadian towns hit by disasters. When the recovery money starts to come in, make sure those dollars stay in town. Yvette Brand has that story.
Ken Pite lives a short ferry ride across the Fraser River from Lytton. He's camped here since his retirement house burnt down in 2021, watching the slow pace of recovery on the other bank.
I think there's little municipalities that are making darn sure that what happened immediately after the disaster here doesn't happen when the disaster hits their town.
He says millions were spent remediating toxic soil, then sifting the layers below because of provincial archaeology regulation. Now property owners are getting bills for this work.
BC government thinks it's that important to do this scale of archaeology work after a disaster, then they should foot the bill for the entire amount.
So far, he says too little money has gone to rebuilding homes. And Lytton's mayor, Denise O'Connor, says it's taking too long.
Why it took so long? It just seems to be going on and on.
Lytton First Nation Chief Nakaya Hanna says people who have returned mostly live in temporary trailers.
There's still sadness. There will always be sadness. I think there's a lot of hope right now. As we see the rebuild starting to begin. People starting to see some hope, starting to feel some hope.
More than $174 million of federal and provincial recovery funding has poured into Lytton's rebuild. So far, only about half a dozen homes are close to completion. Yvette Brenn, CBC News, Lytton.
Protesters are back on the streets of Nairobi today. Anti-government demonstrations have left at least 23 people dead. People gather over the body of a protester near Kenya's parliament. They say he was shot by police. Officers fired bullets at demonstrators yesterday as they stormed the Parliament building. Protesters are angry over newly approved taxes. Today, these Kenyans say they fear there's more violence to come.
Really, the finance bill has caused a lot of losses, as you see, a lot of destruction, and people have really lost their businesses. If government is not ready to change, the worst is still underway.
I think it will feel more violence because people are very angry. People are bitter.
Kenya's President William Ruto is promising to end the protests, but he also says he will not sign his controversial finance bill as is. He has just sent it back to Parliament to be amended. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is home free. He landed in Australia today after 14 years of legal battles. Assange spent the last 5 years in a UK prison fighting extradition to the United States on charges of espionage. The CBC's Anna Cunningham has been following the story from London.
Touchdown in Australia, the moment Julian Assange and his supporters have been waiting years for. His wife, Stella Assange, has thanked the Australian government.
I wish to thank the Prime Minister, Albanese, the officials who have been working.
Speaking at a news conference, Stella Assange said what her husband needs now is time and space.
He wanted to be here, but you have to understand what he's been through. He needs time. He needs to recuperate. And this is a process.
Hours earlier, in a US court in Saipan in the Pacific Northern Mariana Islands, Assange pleaded guilty to one charge of breaching the US Espionage Act as part of a plea deal made with US prosecutors. He was sentenced to time already served in a UK prison and freed. His lawyer, Barry Pollock, said it was the end of years of legal drama.
We firmly believe that Mr. Assange never should have been charged under the Espionage Act and engaged in exercise that journalists engage in every day.
It was the Australian government that finally levied the pressure on the US case. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese welcomed the result.
The Australian government stands up for Australian citizens. That's what we do.
Julian Assange still divides opinion. For some, he is a hero of free speech. For others, a villain who endangered lives. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
NATO has officially appointed Mark Rutte as its next Secretary General. The outgoing Dutch Prime Minister will take over in October. He will be leading the military alliance at a critical time for European security. Ottawa is warning Canadians in Lebanon it's time to get out. A war between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon is looking ever more likely. And if that happens, the Canadian government is warning that it may not be able to run evacuation flights. Evan Dyer reports.
Hezbollah launches missiles towards Israel from a Lebanese hillside. And Israelis watch their own country's missile defenses stop most of them. Scenes like these have been playing out for months, as have Israeli artillery, air and drone strikes on Lebanon. Houses, fields and farms on both sides of the border have burned. More than 60,000 Israelis and around 90,000 Lebanese have fled their homes. There have been civilian deaths on both sides. But now it looks like things could get worse, says former Israeli diplomat Alon Pinkas.
What worries me most is the possibility of a war as a result of miscalculation rather than planning or by design.
Pinkas says Hezbollah doesn't appear to want a full-blown war. Washington has repeatedly warned Israel not to start one either, but events have a logic of their own. Last time Israel and Hezbollah went to war was 2006. Israel bombed all over Lebanon, and there was a mad rush to escape the country. Thousands of people with Canadian passports headed for the port of Beirut.
And a taxi driver that normally would charge you $40 is now charging $600.
Canada ended up evacuating about 15,000 citizens, its biggest evacuation ever. This time, 15,000 Canadians have already registered with the embassy in Beirut, and Canadian officials say that's likely just a fraction of the true number in the country. They're telling them to get out now, before commercial flights stop completely, and warning that this time, mass evacuation may not be possible. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
The sharks are circling Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Speculation about his future as leader of the Liberal Party of Canada is getting louder. A Conservative candidate won a Toronto by-election in a former Liberal stronghold. Trudeau says he's not going anywhere. But if a Liberal leadership race is called, one former MP says he would consider running to replace Trudeau. Rafi Boudjikanian has the details.
Frank Baylis is not a totally unknown quantity.
The Liberal Party has a three-point plan to help the economy.
In 2015, the wealthy businessman and longtime Liberal Party member ran in Pierre Fond-Dollard, a Montreal riding that typically votes for the Grits. He won, but quit after only one term. Now he's considering a comeback on a bigger stage, leadership of the party.
A number of people are asking me to think about this, and I'm taking their request seriously.
Two Liberal MPs who would not speak publicly tell CBC News they've heard his name thrown around as a potential candidate. One even says they advised Baylis to think about mounting a national campaign soon rather than wait a couple of years. Conservative Don Stewart's win a day ago in a by-election in the Liberal stronghold of Toronto St. Paul's has some of the backbench whispers about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's leadership of the Liberals getting louder. For now, he says he's going nowhere.
It's clear that I and my entire Liberal team have much more work to do.
Baylis says he will wait and see what Trudeau's next steps are.
Prime Minister Trudeau will decide what he wants to do if and when he decides to do that.
No sitting Liberal MP has publicly said they'd want to run for leadership or that it's time for Trudeau to step down. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, hello, Winnipeg, and good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Wednesday morning, you're on CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. There's some sun now in downtown Winnipeg. We started with some cloud cover, but now we've got that sunshine, and we'll update your forecast in a moment. The day, though, is not going to get near what our normal temperature is for this time of year. This half hour on the program, we're going to be talking about a special screening of a movie in Winnipeg. It's a movie that's got a really high score on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's all about anxiety this time around. I'm talking about Pixar's Inside Out 2. The Anxiety Disorders Association of Manitoba is hosting a special screening for the movie, and that's coming up tomorrow in Winnipeg. So we're going to hear all about that. Stay with us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC. Let's go right now to Heather Wells for news developing.
Good morning. Well, we are going to get an update today on the investigation into that horrific crash about a year ago near Carberry. RCMP say they will include details about a decision regarding laying charges. The crash left 17 people dead. RCMP say further investigation details they hadn't been able to share before will also come out. So we will hear that coming up in our next news. As well, 2 people were rushed to hospital after being pulled out of a burning townhouse early this morning. Emergency responders were called to the 800 block of Keewatin around 3:45 this morning. The district chief there says trees around that property meant they needed to bring in some extra equipment as they fought that fire. It is now out, and Keewatin has now reopened between Tyndall and Burroughs. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
8:12 is the time right now, and Abby Adeyemi is here to talk forecast.
And I was wondering when the sun is going to make its appearance.
Ta-da!
It made its appearance, and then the temp just jumped to 14. So right now, 14 in the city. The sun is making its appearance. We can expect, that cloudy morning to clear as we get more into the morning. And some light breeze will stay with us. We're looking at a high of 21 today. As mentioned earlier, a bit cooler than our normal high of 25 for this time of the year. And as we move into the evening period, we're going to see more clear skies with the winds becoming light this evening, and temperatures will be a bit cool at around 10 degrees. A sneak peek into tomorrow, the day will start sunny with clouds increasing in the afternoon, and we'll experience a gentle breeze from the south. Other parts of the province, we're looking at more of like 14, 15s across the southern part of the province, and the north is hovering around 9 degrees. Right now, Winnipeg, it is 13, but heading to a high of 21.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, what's going on the road? Lots of stuff developing today.
Well, I guess the one thing was, the biggest thing all morning was that Keewatin closure, northbound, southbound, that is both open now, but keep in mind that it is down to one lane, particularly northbound Keewatin, where there's actually still construction going on, so still may be a little bit slow, and just be careful through that area because there were crews working to put out a fire, so be careful through there. As well, got a call from Anne, who saw a bunch of deer on a yard on Jubilee right by Lilac, and she was really worried that they might cross the road to try to get to the river. So if you're driving down Jubilee around Lilac, keep your eyes peeled. There may be deer crossing there. And finally, Mike called. He's about to start some work with his crew, doing some chipping on westbound Selkirk, starting from McPhillips to the tracks or so in the curb lane. So keep left. Might make things a little slower than usual, even though Selkirk can be pretty darn slow because of the potholes that are already there. So good thing there's some road work going on. So be nice to them as you go by. Mike specifically we asked people to be nice to him because they aren't always so nice to workers who close down the streets. But if you do see something else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
So how you feeling out there this morning? I mean, really, what's going on in your head? What emotions are going through your mind? That is the premise, actually, of a movie that's gained a lot of popularity. I'm talking about Inside Out. Now, the sequel, Pixar's Inside Out 2, hit theaters almost 2 weeks ago, and a lot of people are talking about this movie. There's a special screening coming up tomorrow night in Winnipeg, and it has to do with the Anxiety Disorders Association of Manitoba. We'll hear more about that in a moment, because earlier in the show, we talked to the executive director of ADAM. But right now, before we hear that conversation this morning, once again, let's hear a bit more from this sequel, the movie.
This is Joy, coming to you live in Riley's mind. Our little girl's growing up so fast. Ow.
It should be nothing but smooth sailing from...
Hello. I'm Anxiety. Where can I put my stuff? A new emotion. Oh, I'm sorry. We wanted to make such a good first impression. What do you mean, we? I'm Envy. Oh, look at your hair. Oh, yeah, not happening. That's on we. On what?
It's what you would call the bar down.
What's your name, big fella? That's embarrassment. Welcome to headquarters, embarrassment. Nope, going high. Oh, you got a real sweaty palm there, buddy.
This is such a smart film, and it also has helped to teach about emotions. And as I mentioned, this specific film from Pixar is focusing on anxiety. Now, that is something that from time to time we all have to deal with. But for some people, it is, of course, also a disorder that can be difficult to live with. Anxiety Disorders Association of Manitoba is hosting a special screening tomorrow night at Scotiabank Theatre of the film. So the aim is to encourage more conversations about teenage mental health. Scott McFadden is back with us in studio today, executive director of ADAM, to talk about the screening. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks again for having us on, Marcy.
So how important is a film like this as a teaching tool? I mean, obviously it's cute, it's quirky, it's smart, but how important is it to address these things?
Yeah, well, when the original movie came out in 2015, my child was 4 at the time, went and saw the movie, and it was really, really important movie to our family in terms of opening up that discussion about emotions and being able to actually visualize, what those emotions are. In case of Inside Out 1, child's 4 years old, emotions are much simpler. Fast forward 9 years later, 2024, and Inside Out 2 comes out, and that child who was 4 is now 13 and is experiencing far more complex emotions, including anxiety.
What can folks expect at the special screening tomorrow? What do you have planned?
At 6:45, Dr. Simon Treppel is going to come and give a very hopefully enjoyable presentation about what anxiety disorders are and treatment options. And then we'll have the show. And so really just to normalize that conversation about emotions. And we really think it's important for multi-generations to be at that movie because, you know, in my 50 years on the planet, I think I have forgotten what it's like to be 13 years old. And so this movie is just that nice little reminder for everyone.
You said there's something important. You said a reminder of what anxiety disorders are. And a lot of people still think of an anxiety as a thing or as, you know, a deep disorder. But there's a spectrum of this, right?
Yeah, well, and it's far more common than I think we understand it to be. So 1 in 4 Manitobans over the course of their lifetime will manage an anxiety disorder. And so that commonality, I really think, brings it to the forefront. And, you know, historically, this is something we haven't really talked about is our emotions. And this movie, in a fun way, in a visual way, brings that conversation to the forefront. And it's not actually a scary conversation. And it doesn't really have to be. It just has to be a conversation. Because when we don't talk about it, then it becomes unhealthy.
What are some of signs of anxiety disorder that parents can look out for in their kids?
Yeah, so you know, at Anxiety Disorders, we're a peer support organization specializing in public education. So, you know, my background isn't the clinical background, but certainly, you know, in anxiety disorders is, you know, anxiety is a natural, normal, healthy sort of emotion. But when it carries on for an unnatural, extended period of time, then it does manifest into something more concerning, like a disorder.
So you have to pay attention to the length of time because it could be an anxiety response to something specific that comes and goes, that's natural maybe. But if it goes on for weeks or months, as we've previously discussed, that's when you start really needing to lean into, okay, what's going on here?
That's right. And really, you know, in terms of, you know, treatment options, again, that first conversation is really important. And, you know, for kids, it might be hard to talk to parents. So you can start with a guidance counselor at school. You can talk to a trusted uncle. And there are a number of resources out there within the system once you know, that decision has been made to get help.
I understand, speaking of schools, Scott, that you go to schools and you talk about anxiety. What does that look like? What do the kids ask you?
Yeah, well, kids have a much deeper level of understanding of emotions than we did when we were 13. So, you know, kids are having conversations. They're telling us about, you know, well, actually, when I go to talk therapy, and so they're very open about it. And, you know, these are, you know, jocks and hockey players talking about how they're feeling.
Breaking all kinds of stigmas.
It's pretty great. It's pretty great. But of course, you know, I think unlike when I was 13, I think the kids are young adults are facing a lot more pressures than maybe I was. Actually, just yesterday, I wasn't sure if you caught this, but the Surgeon General in the United States has said that social media is actually something very dangerous along the lines of smoking, which is quite remarkable in terms of the impact on young adolescents.
How are kids responding to the information sessions, and what's it like trying to encourage those conversations in families? Given that maybe a kid might have a better understanding even of anxiety or another issue than even a parent might. So it's important to make those connections, right?
Yeah, you know, and maybe it's a generational thing. I think, you know, the older generations perhaps were a little more reluctant to talk about emotions. And so these conversations are really difficult, which is why this movie is really important. And I did see a note that Stacey Cardigan Smith put up on Facebook after going to see the movie about what anxiety is. And I just want to read you some of those comments because I think it's really important. Anxiety isn't this dark, horrible thing. So anxiety in Inside Out 2 starts out as a character that's just trying to help Riley be the best version of herself and to fit in. Anxiety is helping her to think ahead and manage potential situations. And in that way, anxiety is portrayed without a negative intention. They're just trying to do their best. But eventually anxiety takes over, as you can't pre-plan for every scenario in life, and it's exhausting and unsustainable. And in a particularly emotional scene, Riley's overtaken by anxiety and has an anxiety attack. But again, anxiety is not this horrible, terrible thing. It's just it's something that's there and needs to be managed. But it keeps us safe. It keeps us safe from when we cross the road. But it's just when it becomes that unhealthy, when it overtakes your life, then you need treatment.
Scott McFadden in an early morning conversation here on CBC with us. He's Executive Director of ADAM, the Anxiety Disorders Association of Manitoba. Their special screening of this movie is tomorrow night at Scotiabank Theatre. So as you heard, there's going to be a presentation before the film at 6:45. It starts at 7, and you can still get tickets on their Facebook or Instagram page for ADAM. But act fast, because Scott advises they're nearly sold out this morning.
Your neighborhood, your community, your country, your world, your news that matters, news that belongs to you. Your World Tonight, every night, 7 days a week on CBC Radio 1, on demand on the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
8:24 a.m. is the time right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC Live in downtown Winnipeg and heard across Manitoba. Well, a voice that was heard across Manitoba for many decades has gone silent this morning. We are reading on Facebook this morning in a post from Glory St. Germain that her husband, Ray St. Germain, has passed away. She wrote, quote, "I was blessed to have 50 years with my amazing husband, Ray St. Germain. Together we spent our lives filled with music, love, and laughter with our 5 children." And she went on to thank many, many people. She says, "We're deeply grateful to all the musicians who shared the stage with Ray, contributing to his unforgettable performances in his television series. Your collaboration has not only brought joy to our lives, but has been instrumental in recognizing his numerous awards throughout his illustrious career." Ray St. Germain was a trailblazer. He was a huge voice, especially for Manitoba's Métis community. He was an Order of Manitoba recipient, and he also hosted the nationally syndicated Big Sky Country TV program for more than a dozen years. And of course, his call-in show on NCI, so many TV projects dating back to the 60s. And how special is it now, thinking about what happened just recently, weeks ago, when in Winnipeg, Ray St. Germain was honored with a street naming. And at that event, he sang.
I spent a lifetime waiting for the right time. Now that you're here, the time is near. At last, it's now or never. Come hold me tight.
It's Ray singing just weeks ago.
Kiss me, my darling.
Elvis Presley's Now or Never.
Please be mine tonight.
I just want to speak personally for a moment. I had opportunity to co-MC with Ray St. Germain at the Business Awards for the Indigenous Chamber of Commerce some years back. And if you never met the man in person, he really was lovely. I just think that's the best word for him. He was a lovely, gracious man, and he really loved Manitoba, and he was really proud to be Métis. And that showed through in his many songs, music. Every time you talk to Ray St. Germain, he would celebrate it. And he is Anishinaabe, originally from Pine Creek First Nation. And over the years, musically, he performed alongside the likes of Kenny Rogers. He was inducted into the Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame in 2010. And he also performed alongside Johnny Cash. And so this morning, to remember him, we actually dug into the archives. So speaking of Johnny Cash, what we're about to hear is from the 1960s. It's Ray St. Germain and another legend in this country, Anne Murray, on the CBC television show In Person. This is their cover of Johnny and June Carter's Jackson.
We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. We've been talking about Jackson ever since the fire went out. Jackson, I'm gonna mess around. Yeah. I'm going to Jackson. Look out, Jackson Town. Well, go on down to Jackson. Go ahead and wreck your health. What a way to go. Go play your hand, you big talking man. Make a big fool of yourself. Yeah, yeah, go to Jackson. But go comb that hair. Well, I'm gonna snowball Jackson. Go ahead and see if I care. my coat, 'cause I'm going to Jackson. Goodbye, that's all she wrote. They'll laugh at you in Jackson, and I'll be dancing on a pony keg. They'll lead you around that town like a scolding hound with your tail tucked between your legs. Yeah, yeah, go to Jackson, you big talking man. I'll be waiting there in Jackson, behind my jet band fan. We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. We've been talking about Jackson ever since the fire went out. I'm going to Jackson, and that's a natural fact. We're going to Jackson, ain't never coming back. We're going to Jackson, ain't never coming back.
I'm so glad we were able to find that this morning to pay tribute to Ray St. Germain. That was pulled from the 1960s. His performance with Anne Murray and a cover of Jackson, of course, the Johnny Cash and June Carter's song. That was made famous by them. But I like that version, pulled off of a grainy black and white video from online this morning to remember Ray St. Germain. We did reach his wife, Glory, who is posting on Facebook confirming his death this morning. Ray St. Germain was 83, and he passed away after a long battle with Parkinson's. I know that throughout the day there's going to be many more people that will be remembering him, especially those in our Métis community. And so may he rest in peace. He was just such a nice man. I'm Marcy Marcusa. A quick note on traffic here. We still might have issues on Key Waiton between Tyndall and Burroughs, so be careful around that area. Also, there's some work being done on McPhillips to the train tracks on Selkirk Avenue this morning as well. 788-3093, though, if you needed to update us with anything. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 14 degrees right now in Winnipeg. A cool start to the day. We are seeing the sun finally, and we're going to head to 21 this afternoon. 2 people were rushed to hospital after being trapped in a suite of a burning townhouse. It happened early this morning on Key Waiton. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is there and joins us live. Megan?
Oh, and I was speaking with the fire chief here at the scene this morning. He said fire crews had to go in and rescue those 2 people from inside this burning suite. They were taken to hospital in critical condition and where they remain. And right now we have crews that are putting a fence around this center block, the center 4 suites of this townhouse complex. You can see where the fire has burned from the top of the townhouse. You can see that there are holes in the roof. They had to get an aerial ladder in to fight the fire because the trees are so thick in front of that townhouse. The cause is under investigation, but and people in the area living in the surrounding suites had to be evacuated because of the fire. It is out now, but crews did have to come back in to put out a hot spot in one of the neighboring suites. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. We are going to get an update today on the investigation into a horrific crash near Carberry last year. RCMP say they will include details about a decision regarding laying charges in the crash that left 17 people dead and further investigational details that they were not able to share before. The update comes just over a week after the one-year anniversary of the deadliest bus crash in Manitoba history. The Winnipeg Art Gallery Kamayuk is holding on to a fake painting. It was believed to have been the work of world-renowned Anishinaabe artist Norval Morrisseau. The painting, called Astral Plane Scouts, was donated to the gallery in 2000. Thunder Bay Police have since confirmed it is not authentic. Earlier this month, David Voss pleaded guilty to running an art fraud ring out of Thunder Bay. Stephen Boris is the Winnipeg Art Gallery's CEO.
The greatest misfortune is the impact of this on the artist's legacy and his family and what that does. But there are many victims, the artist, his family, people that purchased works in good faith from dealers, galleries that accepted works in good faith.
The gallery says the painting hasn't been on display since 2013. For now, it is being held in storage. Boris says fakes and forgeries aren't anything new in the art world, but the gallery will learn from this. To Kenora, Ontario now, and Ontario's Special Investigations Unit is investigating how OPP responded to a fire at Anishinaabe Park yesterday. OPP say a person was hurt, but they did not specify how they were hurt. Rachel Hall was driving by the park in Kenora yesterday and pulled over, seeing flames.
And then we heard some gunshots go off, and I was like, oh my God, like what is going on? And then next thing you know, the place is on fire and it burns down. And yeah, I was like shook to my core. And I was like, what the hell actually just happened?
Hall is one of two eyewitnesses who say they heard gunshots at the park yesterday. Officials have not confirmed how the injured person was hurt. Anishinaabe Park, in a Facebook post, says its staff members were not hurt. A Brandon woman has started a group to address what she says are barriers to being deaf in her city. Terry Antonou says it's been frustrating. She has limited resources, and if she needs an interpreter, they have to come from Winnipeg. So she started Brandon Deaf Connections, a coffee group that meets once a month to practice American Sign Language. Antonou says it's not just people who are deaf, but anyone with a disability feels isolated.
Lots of barriers. You have to start breaking them down somehow. This is my way of breaking down some of the barriers.
Antonou says Brandon Deaf Connections is going to have 3 meetings in July because the group is growing so fast. What started as an after-school club for youth and elders in northern Manitoba has turned into a ribbon skirt club. 2 cousins from Pimicikamat Cree Nation completed their skirts just in time for grad. Hannah Benson hopes the cultural teachings in and out of school will carry on.
I hope I could see more of the language coming out, more people having it maybe as their first language even. Learning a lot more. So we just keep it through our generations with the people. We can just keep it with us, keep it close.
The cousins will wear their homemade ribbon skirts as they graduate tomorrow from R.D. Parker Collegiate in Thompson. And a moment to remember.
We will find you acting on your best behavior.
Some 300 students graduating from Maples Collegiate last night. Chelsea Marinas is originally from the Philippines.
Like all the different countries and like children my age experiencing, like I've just seen how grateful I am for like everything I have around me, and that I don't have to experience what other people are experiencing. And I always think about how lucky I am that I am here today, you know, with a good education.
And Chelsea plans to go on to the University of Manitoba to study education. Congratulations. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells and Megan Ketcherson and Joni Nicolo in our newsroom this morning. Thank you, guys. Further to our live team, Kevin Ipatebo behind the controls of YouTube, as well as Abby Adiyemi and Corey Funk. Thank you. Our hardworking APs in the unit, associate producers, and our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your work. I want to mention Radio Noon. If you want to leave a message for their call, and they're asking today, how important is it to you to protect your skin from the sun? And why do you make that a priority? 788-3205. Pardon me. That's our listener line. You need the Noon listener line. 788-3797 if you can't make the call-in live. All right, Corey, traffic.
Eastbound Portage from Tilehurst to Raglan. There's some new construction. Eastbound curb lane is closed until July 1st for sewer work, so it may cause some delays for the next little bit.
Abby.
14 in Winnipeg. The south will see sunny conditions, and then we'll get to a high of 21, and the north is heading to a high of 19.
The Current's coming up next. Thank you. On behalf of all of us, I'm Marcy Mark, who said this is CBC. Thanks for listening.